Chapter 1267. What level is this sword lady? Is it also a spirit sword lady? Gohan looked at the kill celestial sword floating in front of him, and asked with squinted eyes. The kill celestial sword had never appeared in the human world before, so Gohan did not know the level of the kill celestial sword. Let's give it a try. The kill celestial sword and celestial extinguish sword looked at each other and placed their hands on the hilt of the kill celestial sword at the same time. After the three of them sensed each other, celestial extinguish sword frowned and said, "The situation is not optimistic. The kill celestial sword is only an ancient sword lady." What? Gohan was shocked when he heard this. The celestial culling sword was the younger sister of the celestial extermination sword and the celestial extinguishing sword. The celestial extermination sword and the celestial extinguishing sword were so powerful that they could fight against an emperor sword with the strength of a spiritual sword. However, the kill celestial sword was only an ancient sword lady. What's so strange about that? In that battle, the kill celestial sword and the trap celestial sword were the most injured, and they were the first two sisters to fall. They must have hurt their source in the battle, so they fell to ancient sword level. Celestial extinguish sword explained. Gohan's face twitched unconsciously. In Gohan's original plan, the kill celestial sword and the trap celestial sword were to become his immortal sword lady. This way they could match the kill celestial sword and celestial extinguish sword at spirit sword level. But now, the kill celestial sword had become an ancient sword lady. This completely ruined Gohan's plan. Forget it, if there's really no other way, I'll just coordinate with Yuentu and Avicii, Gohan said helplessly. Yuentu and Avicii's twin swords were indeed a pair of immortal swords. However, the problem was that once these two sword ladies synchronized, they would become Emperor Sword Lady. This sounded good, but in reality, Gohan would lose his immortal sword lady position. Back then, Zhetian only had 5 sword ladies, not the normal 6. If this happened to Gohan, Gohan would lose the position of 2 sword ladies. At that time, Gohan would completely lose his immortal grade sword ladies. What was worse was that once the Yuentu and Abi swords became Emperor swords, Gohan would only have one Emperor sword level sword lady. If he needed to find another Emperor sword level sword lady to match the Yuentu and Abi swords, then Gohan would really be at his wits' end. The only Emperor sword level sword lady in the world was the Yuentu and Abi swords. There was no other sword lady that could match them. This was undoubtedly a huge problem for Gohan, and Gohan couldn't even think of a solution to this problem. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, Gohan would never synchronize with Yuentu's Avicii twin swords. The risk involved was too great. Only God knew what kind of even greater changes would happen. You actually want to synchronize with those two evil fellows? Extinguished Celestial Sword was a little unhappy when it heard this. Those two are bastards who killed their masters. Aside from the Nether River Patriarch, no one in the world can truly control them. If you synchronize with them, you'll definitely regret it in the future. I don't want to synchronize with them either, but I can't think of any immortal grade duel, can I? Gohan said helplessly. Sigh. I say, Gohan, you're usually quite smart. Why are you so stupid now? My sister's celestial culling sword is right in front of you. Can't you synchronize with her? Extinguish Celestial Sword said with some dissatisfaction. Didn't you tell your sister that the celestial culling sword's source was damaged, and it has fallen to the level of ancient sword level? Gohan asked in confusion. My sister's source was indeed severely damaged, and it has fallen to the level of ancient sword level. Extinguish Celestial Sword walked over and explained. But that existence split my sister into 2 swords, one yin and one yang, so that my sister can use the yin and yang chi to repair her damaged source. When they fused together again, their source had already recovered to the level of immortal sword level. In essence, my sister can be considered an immortal level sword maiden. However, their original power was used up during the fusion, so they temporarily fell to the ancient sword level. As long as we find a way to replenish the power that was used up, my sister can immediately become an immortal level sword maiden. In other words, the celestial culling sword is now equivalent to an empty bucket of water. As long as we fill up the water, it can become an immortal level sword maiden. Gohan rubbed his nose. How do we fill up the water? The power of chaos. Extinguish, celestial sword said. We sisters are connate treasures born from chaos. If we want to restore our power, we have to replenish the power of chaos. The power of chaos? I think I've heard of this name before. Gohan could not help but recall. His brain worked quickly, and he remembered that not long ago, when he brought the hungry Connor to look for food, didn't he hear Extinguish Celestial Sword say that the aura emitted by the high-purity nuclear fuel rods was the power of chaos? In that case, as long as we put the Celestial Culling Sword in the high-purity nuclear fuel storage room, we can replenish the Celestial Culling Sword's power. Gohan asked immediately. No, you're talking about the Chaos Chi, not the power of chaos. Extinguish Celestial Sword shook its head. The power of chaos is the essence of the Chaos Chi. Someone must refine the Chaos Chi before it can produce the power of chaos. Then how do we refine the Chaos Chi? Gohan asked. I don't know. Extinguish Celestial Sword answered cleanly. How can you not know? Let me tell you, my sister and I are both primordial cardinal treasures. To put it bluntly, we are just two weapons, and weapons cannot cultivate. The ones who can cultivate are you humans. Extinguish Celestial Sword jumped out to explain. It must be those with great magical powers, at least half the level of a sage. Only then can they have the ability to refine the Chaos Chi into the power of chaos. There is no other way. Half the level of a sage? What level is that? Gohan felt a little dizzy. He had heard a lot of words in a short period of time that he had never heard of before. The sage is the strongest in our Eastern primitive system, and half the level of a sage is second only to the sage. In this world, there are only two people who have reached this standard. One is the Lord of the Heavenly Court, the Jade Emperor, and the other is the Lord of Spirited Mountain, Vairocana. Other than them, there is no third person who has reached this level. Extinguish Celestial Sword said. The two you are talking about are both desolate level Yuan Ko. Even with Gohan's strength, when he thought of the desolate level Yuan Ko, his body could not help but tremble. Although Gohan could fight with the flood level Yuan Ko for hundreds of rounds, as long as the desolate level Yuan Ko attacked, Gohan would have to run away. Otherwise, he would die a terrible death. Of course, if a half the level of a sage can't even be a desolate level Yuan Ko, then they might as well commit suicide. Extinguish Celestial Sword stuck out its tongue. Then can I get the Emperor's sword level sword holders to attack? In terms of strength, they are comparable to the desolate level Yuan Ko. Gohan said. No, this has nothing to do with the strength. Only the power of the Eastern primitive system can do this. Even if the Kanzu possessed you, he would not be able to refine the Chaos Chi into the power of chaos. You can only get the two above to help you refine it. Extinguish Celestial Sword mercilessly denied Gohan's idea. This is a bit difficult for me. If I were to meet the two of them, I'm afraid the first thing I would worry about is my life. Gohan smiled bitterly. However, both of them were Yuan Ko, and they were natural enemies of Gohan. It was almost impossible to achieve this goal through negotiation. He could only use strength to force the other party. However, the Jade Emperor was known as the first Yuan Ko among the Yuan Ko. He was the strongest among the Yuan Ko. Even Gu Jinjiendi, who was at his peak, had to recuperate in the palace for 3 years after the battle with the Jade Emperor before he barely recovered. Gohan did not think that he could defeat the strongest among the Yuan Ko. On the other hand, Mahavairokkana, had been seriously injured in the Battle of the Alps a few hundred years ago. It was unknown if he had fully recovered. If he had not recovered, he might be able to force him to refine the power of chaos. Alright, that was just Gohan's idea. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Mahavairokkana had at least the power of a flood-level Yuan-ko. Moreover, Mahavairokkana had been hiding in his lair. If Gohan rushed over, he would not have much chance of winning. After all, Mahavairokkana was an expert who had beaten up 2 Emperor Sword-level sword-bearers. I need to improve my strength. In the end, Gohan put the celestial sword into his dimensional pocket with a bitter smile. After Gohan took the celestial sword away, the passage in the 4 seas spring eye continued to shrink. When Gohan and the rest escaped from the 4 seas spring eye, the spring eye had returned to its original state. It did not look like there was a secret land hidden inside. When Gohan and Liuyan Ling returned to Neptune Palace, most of the guests had already left. The Dragon Kings of the 4 seas had also returned to their respective territories. However, what surprised Gohan was that none of the celestial sword-level sword-bearers left. They all stayed in the Neptune Palace, sitting in their previous seats, silently waiting for Gohan's return. My lords, the coronation ceremony has ended. I wonder what you all want from me by staying here? Actually, even if Gohan did not ask, he could guess why these celestial sword-level sword-bearers were still waiting here. Hee, it seems that your majesty has forgotten. You also promised us that after the ceremony, you would explain to us why your sword ladies are in pairs. We are so envious. Sword Fairy Qianyu, who had asked Gohan before, jumped out again. Don't worry, Sword Fairy Qianyu. I will explain to you now. Gohan said sincerely. Chapter 1268. Hearing Gohan's words, all the immortal sword-wielders turned their attention to Gohan. Everyone looked at Gohan passionately, their eyes filled with excitement. They were too curious. They really wanted to know why Gohan had 2 sets of sword maidens. If they could replicate these, then their strength would increase by several fold. This was an irresistible temptation for all the sword-wielders. Under the gaze of so many immortal sword-wielders, Gohan slowly opened his mouth. I can have 2 sword maidens of the same level at the same time because I have 2 purple palaces in my body. Gohan's words were like a bolt from the blue. What? All the immortal sword-wielders jumped at the same time. This news was too shocking. Gohan had 2 purple palaces in his body, so they jumped in shock. But these immortal sword-wielders thought about it and realized that this was the only reasonable explanation. Humans could not have 2 sword maidens of the same level at the same time because the sword marks of 2 sword maidens of the same level would fight to the death in one purple palace. They would not stop until one of them left the purple palace. But if Gohan had 2 purple palaces in his body, then it made sense. One sword maiden in one purple palace could, of course, be safe. So the crux of the problem was, how did Gohan have 2 purple palaces? Was it natural? Or was it acquired? If it was natural, then everyone could only sigh and lament that they were not talented enough. But if it was acquired, there would only be greed in the eyes of such a person. You don't need to ask me, I will take the initiative to tell you, my 2 Zifu are not naturally formed, this world also cannot give birth to a human with 2 Zifu, my Zifu is completely formed. Gohan said with a smile. That's great. It was acquired. The immortal sword-wielders present clenched their fists in excitement. If it was the day after tomorrow, then they would have a chance to fight for it. Your Majesty the Ocean King, please enlighten us. What is the method to obtain 2 purple palaces? These immortal sword-rank sword-wielders asked in unison. This. Gohan suddenly began to ponder. For a long time, he was unwilling to say the words they wanted to hear the most. Your Majesty, on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, I owe you a favor. In the future, as long as Your Majesty Poseidon has any request, as long as it is within our ability, We, the 30,000 sword-bearers of Los Angeles, are willing to do our best to repay Your Majesty Poseidon's kindness today. The deity of swords, level sword-bearer of Los Angeles, hurried to say. Your Majesty, I'm from Moscow, my city of Berlin, with the Saint of Swords, Saint level sword wielder in Los Angeles taking the lead. The rest of the sword wielder instantly understood what they should say. Just like in Los Angeles, they all expressed that they owed Gohan a huge favor and would do their best to repay him. Ah, you're too kind. I was just organizing my words to see how to tell you more clearly. You don't have to be so generous. Gohan's mouth said beautiful words, but he took all those important favors into his arms without leaving a single one behind. Only then did he continue with a smile on his face. I believe that you all pay a lot of attention to me, and you all know my family background and story very well. Then, you should know that before I reached adulthood, my congenital sword element was only 9 quarks. Gohan said faintly. Several deity of sword rank sword bearers looked at each other, then nodded at the same time. This was indeed clearly recorded in their information. Before Gohan reached adulthood, his congenital sword element was indeed only 9 quarks. If it were not for the fact that this information came from Tomono Kakashi, who would never lie, and that this information had been updated and stored for as long as 12 years, these Saint of Sword rank sword bearers would never believe what they had seen. Many sword bearers scratched their heads and could not understand how a piece of trash with only 9 quarks of congenital sword element could grow to such a level and surpass all sword bearers except for Emperor sword rank sword bearers. Haha, I was very desperate at the beginning, but I did not give up hope. I pinned my last hope on the game, wanting to rely on the sword element provided by the game to reach the minimum standard of 100 quarks of sword element. Fortunately, I succeeded. I successfully gathered the required 91 quarks of sword element in the game, and this was the beginning of this story. At this point, Gohan paused. I believe that everyone already knows that the military governor in the game is me. That's right. The military governor's great achievements in the game often made my grandson very excited. He saw the military governor as his idol. An old Saint of Sword rank sword bearer said with a smile, "But Your Majesty, what does this game have to do with your sword lady?" "Of course it has something to do with it." Gohan laughed. My first ancient sword grade sword Maiden was successfully synchronized with the innate sword essence and Hoteon sword essence. This is the key to me being able to synchronize 2 sword maidens at the same time. Because the 2 sword essences are different, I was able to form 2 Zifu in my body. Your Majesty, please explain in detail. All the Saint of Sword rank sword bearers present widened their eyes and pricked up their ears. They did not want to miss a single word that Gohan said. Alright, since everyone knows that I only have 9 innate sword essence, then you must also know that I was in danger at the Plum Ridge mine. I was sent flying by the Medusas into a boulder, and all the tendons and bones in my body were shattered. If Sword Immortal by Stallion had arrived 5 seconds later and used the Immortal Sword grade medical pod to save my life, then I would have died at the hands of the Medusas. Gohan recounted the dangerous situation that he had personally experienced. Everyone nodded again. However, this incident was not recorded in Tomono Kakashi's database. Instead, it came from Wushang Shifang's mouth. Ever since Gohan became famous, Wushang Shifang regretted countless times when he was drunk. He expressed his regret for not accepting Gohan as a disciple in the first place. As a participant in the whole incident, Wushang Shifang also told everyone about Gohan's dangerous situation. That was how everyone knew that His Majesty the Sea King had experienced such a dangerous situation when he had just made his debut. But why did Gohan suddenly mention this matter? Could it be that having 2 purple palaces was related to this matter? It seems that everyone has already guessed it. That's right, the reason why I have 2 purple palaces is related to this life and death situation, Gohan said emotionally. That day I was slapped into a rock by Medusa. Not only were my bones and internal organs broken, even my ancient sword Lady Chinpin's sword accidentally pierced into my purple palace and shattered it. Hearing Gohan's words, all the saint of sword rank sword bearers present shuddered. For a sword bearer, having their purple palace shattered was the same as being sentenced to death. There was no possibility of recovery, and there was no possibility of becoming a sword bearer again. For sword bearers who were used to being above others, this was worse than death. In fact, the suicide rate of sword bearers with their purple palaces shattered was as high as 25%. That's not right. If Gohan's purple palace had already been shattered, then how could he appear in front of them with 8 sword ladies alive and well, and even ascend to the throne as His Majesty the Sea King? I've already said before that my Chinpin sword's sword scar was made up of 9 quarks of innate sword element and 91 quarks of acquired sword element. In the end, I absolutely did not expect that at the moment my purple palace was shattered, the 9 quarks of innate sword element in Chinpin's sword element actually carried a portion of the purple palace's fragments, as well as Medusa's own power, and formed a new purple palace. The remaining fragments of the purple palace were also carried by the acquired sword element and slowly repaired themselves. So this one had carelessly obtained 2 purple palaces. As for the specific reason for all this one really does not know. I can only say that it was a coincidence. Gohan said finally. This explanation of the reason why Gohan had 2 sword ladies ended just like that. Those immortal sword rank sword bearers went back with a skeptical attitude, and then told Gohan's explanation to the other sword bearers. These people pondered and discussed with each other, and in the end, their skeptical attitude became firm belief. There were a few main reasons. First, they believed that Gohan had no reason to lie to them. There were indeed some scheming among humans, but overall, humans still work together in order to survive. Moreover, this would not affect Gohan's interests. Gohan was still the strongest human at the peak. On the contrary, Gohan could also publicize the method of having 2 sword ladies, and thus gain a lot of popularity among humans. Secondly, it seemed that the only explanation for having 2 sword maidens was having 2 Zifu realms. Thirdly, this kind of thing could not have been done intentionally. It could only have been a coincidence, and Gohan himself had also become stronger after that battle, and began to soar through the ranks. Fourth, and also the most important point, these immortal sword rank sword bearers had no other choice but to believe in Gohan. Later, these sword bearers ended Gohan's conversation for the day, and came up with the prerequisites and methods to have 2 sword ladies. First, innate sword essence must be less than 100 quarks. Second, ancient sword rank sword bearers must have their purple palaces broken. Third, ancient sword rank sword bearers must have their purple palaces pierced. Fourth, luck must be good enough. After combining these 4 reasons, all the sword bearers lost interest in Gohan's method. Just the fact that the purple palaces had to be broken was enough to make few ancient sword rank sword bearers have the courage to try it. What a joke! Gohan was lucky, and his purple palaces had recovered. But for those who were unlucky, wouldn't they be finished for the rest of their lives? In the end, the whole thing was left unsettled. No one tried to imitate Gohan, and realized the desire to have 2 sword ladies, and Gohan became the only sword bearer in thousands of years to have 2 sword ladies. It was worth mentioning that one day, thousands of years later, a silly boy who worshipped Gohan immensely actually tried the method that Gohan had left behind. As a result, another legendary story was created. Chapter 1269. You liar! Liu Ling said disdainfully as she looked at the back of Gohan's head after Gohan sent the immortal sword wielders away. How do you know I lied to them? Gohan turned around and narrowed his eyes at Liu Ling. Do you know why I have 2 sets of sword maidens? I don't know why you have 2 sets of sword maidens. But I know it's definitely not because of what you said. You're a born liar. Trying to get the truth out of your mouth is as easy as ascending to the heavens, Liu Ling said sourly. You know me well. Gu Han smiled. That's right, what I said just now was a lie. If you're unhappy, you can go and tell them. No. Liu Ling shook her head. Although you're a liar, you're not a bad liar. If your method of having 2 sets of sword maidens was feasible and could be popularized among humans, you definitely wouldn't hide it. Since you chose to hide it, then you must know the truth of the matter. If you reveal it, it will cause great chaos. Either you have to pay a huge price to possess 2 sets of sword maidens, or you have to use some sinister methods to harm others without benefiting yourself. When the time comes, I'm afraid it will ruin the current culture of humans, so you chose to hide it in the end. Hearing Liu Ling's words, Gohan looked at her deeply and fell into a long silence. The truth was just as Liu Ling had said. Gohan carefully recalled his life. He had been able to have 2 sets of sword maidens when he had the Doyu sword and the heavenly sword. Without the Doyu sword and the heavenly sword as a catalyst, the past water sword and the Qi sword would not have been able to synchronize with him. The reason why the Doyu sword and the heavenly sword could fuse together was because the fishbowl sword had fused with his sister's soul. It was naturally compatible with his own soul, so it was willing to enter his purple palace and become his sword maidens, even though there was already a sword mark of the same level in his purple palace. Secondly, the severed green silk allowed the 2 sword scars to maintain a balance in a peculiar way. This was the only reason why his Zifu wouldn't be in a complete mess. Thirdly, it was because of the great sword maiden grafting technique. As for the past water sword and the Qi sword, it was because of the furnace of heaven and earth. Under the furnace of heaven and earth, the past water sword and the Qi sword fused with Gohan's flesh and became a part of Gohan's flesh. To a certain extent, they had become a part of each other, which prevented them from fighting. As a result, in the end, it became a custom for Gohan to have 2 sword ladies at the same level, and it was impossible for a spirit sword to not have 2 sword ladies. This was probably the real reason why Gohan could have 2 sets of sword maidens. If Gohan revealed the real reason, would the people follow Gohan's example and destroy the soul of an innate sword maiden, then kill their own sister to create a second Doyu sword? Would they also have to master the sword maiden grafting technique, which was an extremely sinister technique? Would they also have to find the green silk slash and use its power to fuse with the sword marks? Would they also have to spend tens of thousands of drops of Emperor's blood to activate the heaven and earth furnace and fuse the sword maiden with their flesh and blood? If anyone wanted to achieve the above 4 conditions, they would have to set off a storm of blood among humans. At that time, humans would lose far more than they gain. This was the fundamental reason why Gohan concealed the truth of the matter. It would be fine if someone who knew all of this could say these words, but Liu Ling didn't know much about this matter, yet she could clearly see through Gohan's thoughts based on her understanding of Gohan's personality. Gohan couldn't help but sigh. I didn't expect you to say such words. I like you even more now. No, don't say such words. It's impossible for the 2 of us to be together. Hearing Gohan's sigh, Liu Ling was a little hesitant, but she replied resolutely. Why? Hearing Liu Ling's words, Gohan felt a rush of blood to his head. He had been suppressing this question in his heart for almost 2 years. Why did you suddenly leave Shanghai Pass that day? Why didn't you look for me for 2 years? Why have you been deliberately avoiding me? What exactly happened inside? What's the reason? There's no reason. We can't be together. Don't ask me any more. Liu Ling said while biting her lip. No, since you know me so well, Gohan, then you should know my character. As long as I love something, I will definitely get it. Gohan held Liu Ling's hand in his. I, Gohan, don't like to force others to do things against their will. Raise your head, look into my eyes, and tell me. If you, Liu Ling, don't like me, tell me now. I will immediately ignore you and pretend that I don't know you in this life. I don't. Liu Ling raised her head, but when she met Gohan's eyes, she immediately looked away. She didn't dare to look into Gohan's eyes at all. In reality, Liu Ling couldn't even say that she didn't like him. It looks like you still have me in your heart. Gohan revealed a joyful smile and said, I hate watching TV, and I hate watching boring primetime family dramas the most. For a strange reason or misunderstanding, two people who love each other can struggle for 30 or 40 episodes and still can't be together. I hate this kind of story, and I hate this kind of plot even more. I'll give you an ultimatum now. Either you tell me the reason why you can't be with me, or I'll kill my way to the Liunian family. I'll destroy the entire Liunian family until you're with me. Gohan said domineeringly. You madman. Liu Ling glared at Gohan. This is between the two of us. What does it have to do with my family? Why can't you tell right from wrong? Who said it has nothing to do with your family? Don't forget you saw it with your own eyes. It was your ancestor who sent my younger sister, Gu Xuanwu, to the past. Unless your Liunian family returns my sister to me, I'll flatten your Liunian family sooner or later. Gohan's words were filled with hatred. That was his own daughter, and she disappeared in the past just like that. Perhaps he would never be able to see her again in this lifetime. So you still remember this matter? Hearing Gohan's words, Liu Ling's expression first turned cold, then sorrowful. Why? Am I not supposed to remember this matter? Gohan said. Fine. Since you want to know the truth so much, I'll tell you. I don't want to bear it alone anymore. Just don't regret it in the future. Liu Ling gulped and opened her mouth slightly. Just as she was about to reveal the huge secret that she had kept in her heart for a long time, Gohan, I've brought your things back. Misaka Mikoto suddenly walked over with a smile on her face. Humph, you have so many girlfriends. Liu Ling looked at the beautiful Misaka Mikoto, then at Gohan, and snorted coldly. If you want to know the truth, come to the deck and find me in 3 hours. She then left the room. Did I come at a bad time? Why don't you get her back first? Misaka Mikoto said awkwardly when she saw Liu Ling leaving in a huff. It's fine. We need to calm down. Gohan smiled bitterly and then said to Misaka Mikoto, Did you bring the 7 little ones back? Of course. The 7 little ones have been freeloading in my house for more than 3 years. If I don't return them to you, they'll eat until they're broke. Misaka Mikoto said as she patted her head and smiled. Why aren't the 7 of you coming out to meet your parents? No. Since they don't want us anymore. We don't want to acknowledge them as our parents. We'll live with Mother Mikoto from now on. A few resentful voices came from Misaka Mikoto's hair. I'm not your mother. If that idiot finds out, he'll go crazy again. Misaka Mikoto reached into her hair and pulled out a little elf with a pair of wings from it. Upon closer inspection, it was the 7 poor ones who had been missing for 3 years. No. I'm not coming out. I don't want them anymore. They're all bad people. The 7 poor ones who were pulled out immediately flapped their wings and tried to fly back into Misaka Mikoto's hair. You little ones, if you don't come out, I'll use my hair to give you electric shock therapy. As soon as Misaka Mikoto finished speaking, sparks of electricity floated through her hair. It was just a small warning. The 6 little ones had probably been electrocuted a few times. After receiving Misaka Mikoto's warning, they could only lower their heads and fly out of Misaka Mikoto's hair. When they saw Gohan, the 6 little ones snorted at the same time and turned their heads to the side in disdain. It was as if they did not want to see Gohan. I'll leave them to you. They're all your daughters. Gohan did not know what to do with them. He had no choice but to let Chinpin out. First pour, second pour, third pour, fourth pour, sixth pour, seventh pour. Mommy misses you so much. As soon as Chinpin came out, he instantly grabbed the 6 little ones who were flying in the air like an eagle catching chick. After 3 years, Chinpin was still as skilled as ever. He did not seem rusty at all. Wait, why is there one missing? Where's fifth poor? Gohan glanced at them and did not see fifth poor. She's here. Misaka Mikoto opened her hand. In her palm was an exquisite golden gem. Chapter 1270. Before Gohan entered Shanghai Pass, he was very troubled about how to deal with the 7 impoverished ones. This was because the 7 destitute beggars were essentially Yuan bandit beggars. Moreover, they were Yuan bandit beggars who were essentially equivalent to universe-level Yuan bandit beggars. If these 7 little fellows were brought into the mountain pass, as soon as they appeared, the great heavenly cycle star formation would immediately collapse. Of course, Gohan could also choose to keep the 7 impoverished ones in a dimensional pocket. That way, he would not have to worry about the Zhou-Tian star battle formation being destroyed. But the problem was that locking 7 little fellows at their most lively age in a dark dimensional pocket for a full 3 years was an extremely cruel and inhumane matter, no matter how one looked at it, and it was impossible for a poor person to agree to it. What if he released the 7 of them into the wild, and let them live on their own? After thinking about it carefully, he realized that it was impossible. Although the 7 poor people were all at the universe level, their true strength was only at the ghost level. They would die on the spot if they encountered a few powerful Yuenko or sword bearers. By the time Gohan returned from Shanghai Pass, the 7 impoverished ones might not even be alive. Leave them to Lu Shihua? What a joke! During the 3 years that Gohan stayed in Shanghai Pass, Lu Shihua had been tortured by those shameless old men in Yuzhong City. If the 7 impoverished ones were to stay by Lu Shihua's side, they would become the best targets for those old men to attack Lu Shihua. Therefore, after much consideration, Gohan sent a message to Misaka Mikoto, expressing his hope that she could take care of Chinpin on his behalf. He then asked the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit to take care of the 7 impoverished ones for a few days while he waited for Misaka Mikoto to arrive. Only then did he leave for Shanghai Pass with a peace of mind. The 5th impoverished one's attribute is lightning affinity. She lived with me every day and absorbed the lightning in my body. A month ago, she suddenly turned into a gem. Her sisters said that it's a good thing, but I don't know if it's true. Misaka Mikoto returned the 5th impoverished one's gem to Gohan. It's a good thing. This means that the 5th poverty is about to evolve. Gohan thought of the 3rd poverty, who had also absorbed the true supreme water and turned into a gem. That's great. I haven't let you down for the past 3 years. You have no idea. These 7 little rascals are really good at messing around. That psycho Hazy is going crazy because of them. Misaka Mikoto said as she covered her mouth. Sorry for troubling you. I owe you a big favor, and I will definitely repay you in the future. Gohan said sincerely. At the same time, Chinpin seemed to have subdued the 6 little fellows who were rebelling just now. These little fellows stood in a row in front of Chinpin, obediently listening to Chinpin's lecture. Gohan listened for a bit, and it was nothing more than, listen to mommy. Listen to daddy. Mom and dad love you. I sent you out to protect you. It's all nonsense to trick kids. You'll naturally learn it when you become parents. Oh right, how's your sister, Miss Gu Xianyuan? The last time you fought alongside her in Yuzhong City, she really did a lot for you and Yuzhong City. You're so lucky to have a sister like her. Misaka Mikoto said emotionally. It seemed that Gu Xuanyuan's image had left a deep impression on Misaka Mikoto. She doesn't like the city. She likes to adventure alone in the wild. I don't know where my sister is, Gohan said as calmly and normally as he could. It was a very strange feeling to hear Misaka Mikoto praise him as a good sister. Is that so? Misaka Mikoto chatted with Gohan for a while longer. She told Gohan about his recent stories and his views on the world. In short, they chatted about everything. As they chatted, Misaka Mikoto's eyes suddenly became wet. She could not hold back her tears and they flowed freely from her eyes. Sister Mikoto, what's wrong? Misaka Mikoto's sudden tears caught Gohan off guard. It's fine. You've been with these 7 kids for a long time. They've always called me their mother. Now that we're separated, in our hearts. Before Misaka Mikoto could finish her sentence, she opened a void door and fled for her life. If Misaka Mikoto did not run away immediately, she was afraid that she would snatch the 7 kids back from Gohan. Mikoto's mommy? Seeing Misaka Mikoto run away for no reason, the 6 kids who were still being lectured let out a few sorrowful cries. Anyone who saw them would be heartbroken. Did I do something wrong? Gohan looked at the 6 pitiful little fellows who were crying, and felt regret in his heart. Perhaps he should not have asked Misaka Mikoto for the 7 kids. He should have let them live with Misaka Mikoto. After lamenting for a while, Gohan looked at his watch and realized that it had been an hour since Liu Ling left. Thinking about the 3-hour deadline, Gohan was ready to head to the deck. However, before he could take a step, he was blocked by 3 wretched fellows. Botet greets Master. Botet has apologized to Master. Ice Eyes greets Master. Ice Eyes has apologized to Master as well. Anubis greets Master. I was wrong too. Ever since the 3 of them had participated in Gohan's ascension ceremony and witnessed Gohan's strength, the 3 of them had become anxious and fearful. They were deeply afraid that Gohan would come to settle the score and use the godhoods in his hands to teach them a lesson. Therefore, after thinking about it, the 3 of them decided that instead of letting Gohan punish them, they would take the initiative to apologize to Gohan. That way they might be able to win his forgiveness. Therefore, the 3 Egyptian deities did not care about universe-level Yuan Ko's face anymore. When they saw Gohan, they immediately knelt in front of Gohan and kowtowed to Gohan to apologize. Do you know that you were wrong? Gohan looked at the 3 unlucky fellows. Why didn't I know that you were wrong? Tell me, what did you do wrong? We shouldn't have not appeared to protect Master when he was in danger. We shouldn't have delayed Master's orders. We shouldn't have been greedy for pleasure and rebuilt our temple. The 3 of them said with sincerity and self-blame on their faces. Gohan looked at them and thought that they were really wrong. All right, get up. You didn't do anything wrong. I don't blame you. Gohan sighed and personally helped the 3 unlucky fellows up from the ground. Then, he said faintly, I still remember the order I gave you. Without my order, you can do anything except not hurting humans. After I came out of Shanghai Pass, I didn't take the initiative to give you any orders. Whether you were greedy for pleasure or rebuilding the temple, you didn't violate my order. Naturally, it wasn't your fault. Therefore, I said that the 3 of you didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to find fault with yourselves. Thank you, Master. The 3 Egyptian deities were moved, but they still said with some worry, but the 3 of us still delayed the order. Master told us to come to the Sea Emperor Palace a day ago, but we delayed it for a whole day. This wasn't an order I gave you, but an invitation. I said in the letter that I invited you to the Sea Emperor Palace. Gohan smiled. Since it's an invitation, there is naturally no time limit, and there is no rule that you must come. Whether you come or not is your own business. This isn't your fault. Thank you, Master. Hearing Gohan's words, the 3 Egyptian deities completely let go of the worries in their hearts and suddenly became happy. But there is one thing. Unexpectedly, Gohan suddenly changed the topic, which made the hearts of the 3 Egyptian gods, who had already been relieved, hang in suspense again. If you come, you can get the gift I give you. If you don't come, the gifts will naturally be gone. Gifts? Do we still have gifts? The 3 Egyptian deities looked at each other, then said with a flattering smile, We can't wait to offer gifts to Master. How dare we accept Master's gifts? Master, please don't make things difficult for us. In the hearts of the 3 Egyptian deities, gifts were nothing more than gold, silver, jewelry, or some delicious food. Anyway, it was a kind of thing that looked good on the surface, but in fact, it was useless. These kinds of things were useless to them, so it was better to take the initiative to give up. At least they could get a good impression in front of Gohan. Is that so? Don't you want these 3 things? Gohan smiled and waved his hand in the air. There were 3 crystal-clear patterns floating in the air. Seeing these 3 crystal-clear patterns, the 3 Egyptian deities seemed to enter a state of petrification in an instant. They stood there motionless, looking at the 3 patterns in a daze. Their eyes were full of excitement, doubt, and fear. The 3 of you should be able to tell that these 3 patterns are the runes that control your godhead. As long as I have these 3 runes, the safety of your godhead is in my hands, am I right? Gohan asked with a smile on his face. Master, you are wise. The 3 Egyptian deities nodded repeatedly, but they did not know what Gohan was planning. At this time, he took out the runes that controlled them. Could it be that he was encouraging them to take this opportunity to snatch these runes back? Starting from I Ching, you have wasted more than 800 years for I Ching and me. This is enough to wash away your past sins. I was weak before, so I still needed to borrow your strength. But now that my strength has reached great success, the 3 of you are no longer of much use to me. As long as you promise not to hurt humans again, you can live the rest of your lives in peace. As soon as Gohan's voice fell, the 3 runes flew into the chests of the 3 Egyptian deities and completely merged with their godhood. The seal that had controlled them for 800 years also disappeared the moment the runes merged. The 3 Egyptian deities were completely free. Chapter 1271. The 3 Egyptian gods thanked him profusely and left. For the rest of their lives, just as they had promised, they would never harm a single human ever again. Almost an hour and a half had passed by the time the problem of the 3 Egyptian gods was resolved, but Gohan was still unable to go to the deck to look for Liu Ling. This was because Lu Shihua had brought Lu Yin over. Master, take a look at my brother and see what's wrong with him, Lu Shihua said anxiously as he pulled Lu Yin's hand. Gohan noticed that although Lu Yin appeared very quiet at this time, there was a fierce glint in his eyes from time to time. It made Gohan feel as if Lu Yin was going to destroy the world. How long has this been going on? Gohan asked hurriedly. Ever since my brother found out about his true sword essence, I felt that he started to become irritable. His teacher often told me that he bullied his classmates in class. Once, he even broke a classmate's limbs. I had to pay a large sum of money to settle this matter. Later, I was afraid that he would hurt other classmates, so I could only stop him from going to school and let him cultivate at home. I often accompanied him, hoping that I could let him feel the warmth of a family, so his situation improved for a period of time. But after he became an adult last year, this situation became more and more serious. Other than the people who lived with him on a daily basis who could temporarily suppress him, he was full of aggression towards everyone. Especially after I left Yuzhong City this time, Auntie Meiyun said that Lu Yin cried every day, was sad, and angry. There were a few times when he even wanted to rush out of the house to find Shi Juyuan and the others for revenge. Fortunately, Sword Immortal Ling Su mediated in the end, so he didn't cause too much trouble. Master, my brother isn't like that. He used to be very docile and a very obedient child. I really don't understand why he became like this. Master, do you think it's because I didn't take good care of him? Lu Shihua's voice became tearful as he said this. This isn't as simple as a change in personality. Gu Han's hand pressed on Lu Yin's head, and Lu Yin instantly became berserk. He stared at Gu Han like a wild wolf. Do you see it now? There's a wolf living in his head. What? Lu Shihua turned pale with fright. Master, don't scare me. How could there be a wolf in my brother's head? Humph. If you obediently hide yourself, I won't be able to find any traces of you. But you actually dared to show your face, then don't blame me for being rude to you. 2 streams of sword energy shot out from Gohan's fingers, which flew into Lu Yin's nostrils. Lu Yin's expression instantly became one of extreme terror. At the same time, his body began to struggle violently. His entire body began to sweat and his clothes were instantly drenched. It was as if he had just been fished out of a pool of water. In the end, his entire body fell limply to the ground. Little brother, what's wrong? Lu Shihua immediately hugged Lu Yin and asked emotionally. Sister, I'm fine. Although Lu Yin's condition looked terrible, the fierceness in his eyes had already disappeared. In its place was a pair of pure and flawless eyes that Lu Shihua hadn't seen in a long time. From this, it could be seen that Lu Yin's current condition was indeed very good. Master, what was going on? What's wrong with my brother? Is he all right? Lu Shihua took care of his brother for a while, then impatiently asked Gohan. I have to tell you the truth. Your brother's condition is very serious. There's something in his body that doesn't belong to him. No. Or perhaps it's the real him. I can only temporarily suppress it, but I can't help you get rid of it. Gohan said worriedly. Master? What do you mean? Why don't I understand? Lu Shihua asked helplessly. You might not know this, but your brother's body carried the power of the rule from the moment he was born. However, when he was young, the power of the rule was very weak, and it couldn't affect your brother's original state of mind. But as he grew older and received a heavy blow from the sword essence, your brother's heart developed a lot of dark thoughts, and this dark mind coincided with the power of the rule. As the power of the rule grew stronger, it gradually began to affect your brother's mind. In the end, it was very normal for your brother to be completely controlled, Gohan said. How could this be? Lu Shihua looked as if he had lost his life. He couldn't accept Gohan's words at all. That's impossible. Isn't the power of the rule something that only the primeval Yuan Ko and the Imperial Sword Lady can possess? My brother is just a baby. How could he be born with the power of the rule? I don't know why your brother was born with the power of the rule, but it's a fact that the power of the rule exists in his body. No one can change that, Gohan said. Then, Master, how can I save my brother? Tell me. Lu Shihua begged. You're my disciple. If I could save you, I would definitely save your brother. However, I really can't save your brother now. Gohan sighed. This power of the rule is very weak to me now. If I were to be ruthless, I could indeed destroy this irregular power. However, this power of the rule has grown up with your brother since he was young. It has become inseparable from your brother's body. If I forcefully destroy the power of the rule in your brother's body, your brother's life and soul will end at the same time. It's the same as killing him. The most I can do is use my power of the rule to temporarily weaken the power of the rule in Lu Yin's body so that his consciousness can regain the upper hand. But in the end, this is only a temporary solution. Every time you weaken the power of the rule, your brother's soul will also be weakened. This kind of suppression can only be done 3 times at most, and your brother will still die. Gohan sighed and said. Then, is there really no way for me to save my brother? Lu Shihua collapsed onto the ground powerlessly. She seemed to have returned to the time when she lived in the slums without anyone to rely on and was bullied wantonly. She thought that with her current status, she would no longer feel as powerless as before. However, at that moment Lu Shihua realized that she was still so powerless when faced with things that she could not win. It's not that there's no way. It's just that he has to rely on himself. Gohan glanced at Lu Yin, who was lying quietly on the ground. I have already weakened the power of the rule in his body to the extent that his soul can resist. The next step is up to him. If he can use his will to conquer the power of the rule, he will be reborn and obtain power equivalent to that of a primordial grade Yuan Ko. What if he fails? Lu Shihua raised her head abruptly and looked at Gohan anxiously. Then I will kill him with my own hands. Gohan replied mercilessly. I will never allow anyone who leaves my house to become a Yuan Ko. Yes, I understand. Lu Shihua nodded weakly and led Lu Yin away slowly. There won't be anyone else looking for me, right? Gohan looked at the time. There was only half an hour left before the 3-hour deadline. Gohan really could not let Liuyan Ling wait any longer. However, as the saying goes, what one fears will come true. Lu Shihua had just left when Li Bai appeared. What do you want again? Gohan said with a straight face. Li Bai, who was smiling, was stunned. After a while, he smiled awkwardly and said, Brother Gohan, how did Bai offend you? No. It's about someone else. Gohan smiled bitterly and pointed at his wrist. I only have half an hour left. If you have something to say, make it short. So that's how it is. Li Bai laughed. Nothing much. I just came to say goodbye to you, Brother Gohan. Goodbye? Where are you going, Brother Bai? Gohan asked curiously. Bai wants to go to Chang'an. Li Bai raised his head, his eyes filled with longing. I can't go back to the original Chang'an. I won't be able to see the majestic Changle Palace, the clear Huaqing Pool, and the beautiful imperial concubine. The only thing left is Chang'an. But the real Chang'an has long been destroyed. The Xi'an of the future is no longer the original Chang'an. Even if that Xi'an is now in ruins, what will you see if you go there now? Gohan could feel Li Bai's longing, but he couldn't help but try to persuade him. Even if everything has changed, at least the sky and the earth are still there. Li Bai smiled. Plus, Bai also wants to explore this new world. Europe, Asia, America, Africa, and Australia, as well as the North and South Poles, I want to see them all. Don't stop Bai. If that's the case, then I wish you a safe journey, Brother Bai. With Li Bai's words, Gohan couldn't say anything more. He could only speak with sincerity. Without Brother Bai's help, I wouldn't have been able to return from the Martyr's Palace alive. I owe Brother Bai a huge favor. If Brother Bai is in danger in the future, just give me a call. Whether it's within my power or not, I will do my best to help Brother Bai. Haha. To be able to receive a promise from the Sovereign of the Sea, Bai isn't at a disadvantage. Li Bai laughed, then cupped his hands towards Gohan. Goodbye. Goodbye. Gohan watched Li Bai disappear into the void gate. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in his head. He suddenly remembered that there was an important question he hadn't asked Li Bai yet. Unfortunately, Gohan couldn't enter the void, so he couldn't chase after Li Bai. Green Lotus Sword Fairy, is that you? Gohan muttered to himself as he watched Li Bai disappear into the distance. Chapter 1272. Did you really have to wait until the last minute? Liuyan Ling said angrily when she saw Gohan appear in front of her again. She had told Gohan that she would wait 3 hours for Gohan. She had not expected Gohan to really make her wait for 3 hours. This made Liuyan Ling feel deeply hurt again. If you knew how many things I dealt with in those 3 hours, you definitely wouldn't be angry with me. Gohan smiled bitterly. But at least I made it in time. Can you answer the question you didn't answer before? What question? Liuyan Ling asked. Of course it's the question of why the two of us can't be together. Gohan said. Do you really want to know the answer to that question? Liuyan Ling's expression wavered. I think it's better if you don't know. If it has nothing to do with me, I'm not interested. However, this matter is very important to me. I must know the reason behind it. Otherwise, I won't let your Liuyan family have peace. Gohan continued to use the Liuyan family to threaten her. Really? Liuyan Ling gritted her teeth. She was speechless. Someone actually dared to use the Liuyan family, the strongest family in the world, to threaten her. However, she had no way of dealing with it. She could only let him use the Liuyan family to threaten her. Since when did the world become like this? Do you know that if you really choose to fight with the Liuyan family, I guarantee that even if you become an Emperor Sword wielder, you will fall at the hands of the Liuyan family. The foundation of the Liuyan family is much more than you can imagine. Your threats are so laughable and useless. I know. The foundation you speak of is Yuan Ko, who has been with the Liunian family for so many years. There is even a powerful desolate level Yuan Ko among them. This is indeed the foundation that makes the Liunian family invincible in the world. However, don't forget that you're still humans. If you invite Yuanko to help you in the face of a human's challenge, the reputation that your Lunyan clan has built up over 1,000 years will be ruined. Gu Han said calmly. How can there be such a vicious guy like you in the world? Liunian Ling was exasperated, but she was caught by Guhan. Indeed, the Lunyan family could not use their Yuan Ko's trump cards to face the humans' open challenge. This was like a civil war between two parties, and one party suddenly brought in the Japanese to help. It would probably cause the entire Huaxia to rebel, and the reputation of the party itself would be destroyed in an instant. I am challenging you fair and square. It's also for my cousin's revenge. How am I evil? Guhan said coldly. All right. Since you must know, I'll tell you. Liunian Ling took a deep breath, then looked at Guhan's scabbard and said, My Liunian Lings, man is only allowed to love me in this lifetime. Even if it's his sword Maiden, I will not allow them to take away my love. If you want to be with me, then fine. You just have to swear to the heavens that you will never fall in love with your sword Maiden, and you will never have any relations with them in the future. The two of you will maintain a normal distance between friends, and you will only love me, Liunian Ling, in this lifetime. I will marry you and be with you forever. Hearing Liunian Ling's words, Guhan instantly fell silent. What? Say something. Can you do what I ask of you? Liunian Ling said in a bone-chilling voice. They are all my sword maidens. How can I do what you ask of me? I can promise you that among true humans, my love will only be for you. Guhan said in an incomparably solemn tone. Ha 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 ha. Liunian Ling suddenly began to laugh wantonly. She laughed so hard that tears formed at the corners of her eyes. What a joke. Among true humans, you only love me. Could it be that there is a woman that you like in Yuan Ko? Just like that ridiculous father of mine, he actually abandoned my biological mother for that Yuan Ko woman? Ha 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 ha. It's really too ridiculous. Wait a minute. Hearing Liunian Ling's words, Guhan was stunned. Guhan clearly remembered Shi Shui mentioning that Liunian Ling's father had given birth to Reina Takasaka with Yuan Ko before giving birth to Liunian Ling with a human. How did Liunian Ling make it sound like he abandoned his human wife before getting together with Yuan Ko? Even though he had many questions in his mind, it was not the right time to ask. There is no Yuan Ko. There will never be a possibility between me and Yuan Ko. Ling, you have to believe me. Guhan grabbed Liunian Ling's hand. Impossible? What about that woman? What about Misaka Mikoto? Can you say that you have nothing to do with her? Liunian Ling said angrily. She is my sister. She also has someone she likes. We are at most siblings. There is no relationship like what you think. Guhan said. That's right. You have so many sisters. Gu Xianyuan, Gu Shirhan, and now Misaka Mikoto. Oh right, you have two younger sisters, Gu Xuanwu and Gu Yun. Will you only be satisfied if you take all of them into your harem? Liunian Ling said maniacally. Enough. Do you believe that I won't give you a tight slap if you continue to spout nonsense? Guhan was infuriated by Liunian Ling's words. Gu Yun was his biological sister. Gu Xuanwu was his biological daughter. Gu Xianyuan and Gu Shirhan were basically Guhan himself. How could Guhan take all of them into his harem? At that moment, Guhan suddenly understood an old saying that had survived the great cultural destruction. Women can be extremely unreasonable sometimes. Don't try to reason with them. Alright, hit me then. Hit me if you have the guts. Liunian Ling was furious when she heard Guhan threatening her. She grabbed Guhan's hand and pressed it on her face. She shouted, Hit me then! Hit me then! Hit me if you have the guts! My face is right here. Hit me if you have the guts! Do you think I won't dare? Gohan snorted coldly and raised his palm high. Forget it. This plot is about to fall into a third-grade primetime family drama. If he dares to hit me, I'll have nothing to do with him for the rest of my life. Liu Ling closed her eyes when she saw Gohan's hand raised high. At the same time, she thought to herself sadly. However, what happened next was completely out of Liu Ling's expectations. The raised palm did not land on her face. Instead, a pair of moist lips kissed her lips heavily. There was even a tongue that could not wait to enter her mouth. Ugh! What are you doing? Liu Ling used all her strength to move her mouth away and asked in a shrill voice. Do I need to say more? Feel it yourself. After saying that, Gohan pressed forward again. This time, not only his lips, but his whole body pressed forward as well. He pushed Liu Ling to the deck and used his body to suppress Liu Ling's body, making it difficult for Liu Ling to move. At the same time, he shot out a thin sword energy from one of his hands. What are you doing? You're crazy. No. You? What do you want to do to me? In the midst of her frantic resistance, Liu Ling suddenly felt a chill on her body. Then, her clothes disappeared in an instant, or rather, they turned into powder. It turned out that Gohan used his sword energy to shred Liu Ling's clothes into rice grain-sized fibers. With their big movements, the clothes turned into flying ashes. In the next second, Fleeting Time's trousers followed suit, disappearing along with his clothes. So, at this moment, Liu Ling only had a set of underwear left on her body. Well, Liu Ling's taste was quite unique. She actually wore a set of very simple, old-fashioned, traditional underwear that was not sexy at all, and it was square. Bad review. You, Gohan. Don't tell me. You want to be strong. At this time, Liu Ling realized what Gohan wanted to do. That's right. I don't want to waste my time with you anymore. From now on, you're mine. Gohan really couldn't stand the endless love drama anymore. He planned to learn from some outstanding seniors and force himself on her. If today's Operation Overlord was successful, then Liu Ling would never be able to leave him for the rest of her life. You're crazy. Liu Ling began to struggle with all her might, but Gohan's strength was beyond imagination. After all, Gohan now had the body of a meteor stage Yuan-ko, while Liu Ling still had the body of a human. How could she resist Gohan's strength? Let go of me, or else my sword maidens will attack. Liu Ling screamed. Okay, I have 8 sword maidens, and all 8 of them would like to play with your sword maidens. Gohan really wanted to play the role of the villain to the end. Seeing that the plot was about to turn into an 18-plus movie that everyone would like to see and hear. No, we can't have a relationship. Let go of me. Otherwise, both of us will regret it for the rest of our lives. Liu Ling was about to cry. Then tell me, why can't we have a relationship? If you don't give me a reason that I can't refuse, don't even think about escaping from my hands. Gohan said bluntly. Okay, you forced me to do this. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. You're my ancestor. We're related by blood. We're committing incest. Bastard. Fleeting Time Ling closed his eyes and said something that caused Gohan's body to stiffen. You're my ancestor. We're related by blood. We're committing incest. Bastard. After saying that, Liu Ling could no longer control her emotions. She completely collapsed and began to cry. Chapter 1273. When Liu Ling revealed the truth, the entire deck fell into silence. Gohan sat there in a daze, not saying a word, while Liu Ling lowered her head and sobbed. After who knew how long, Liu Ling finally stopped crying. She looked at Gohan in confusion and asked, "Why don't you find it strange? Why don't you ask me why?" After calming down, Liu Ling did find it very strange. When she first learned the shocking truth, she did not recover for a full 3 days. She was immersed in great pain, sorrow, and disbelief. A normal person's first reaction after hearing this news would be to immediately ask her the reason. But this Guhan did not do anything apart from staring blankly. It was as if he already knew this news. Could it be that you already knew this? Liu Ling asked with widened eyes. No. I just learned this from you. Guhan's expression changed, and he said very stiffly. Then why don't you ask me the reason? Liu Ling asked again. I was very confused at first, but after you said that, I suddenly understood. Guhan sighed. What did you understand? Liu Ling blinked. I understand why Kenzu brought the black tortoise into the eternal door of truth. I could not understand why Kenzu did that no matter how hard I tried. Now I understand. If Kenzu did not kick the black tortoise in, I'm afraid your Lu Nian family would not exist at all. Or rather, the Lu Nian family would still exist, but it would not be your Lu Nian family. Guhan said calmly. Looks like you've really thought it through. Liu Ling let out a long sigh. That's right. I only found out half a year ago that your cousin, Gu Xuanwu, was actually the wife of our old ancestor. Our entire Lu Nian family is the descendant of our old ancestor, and you are our old ancestor's old ancestor's old ancestor. Following that, Liu Ling told a story that spanned a whole 1,000 years. Ever since Gu Xuanwu returned to 1,000 years ago through the eternal door of truth, there were still 8 days before the apocalypse. The first thing Gu Xuanwu did when he returned to that era was to seek revenge on Kenzu. After 12 long days of searching, Gu Xuanwu actually found Kenzu hiding in the ruins. Just as Gu Xuanwu was about to seek revenge on Kenzu, a powerful Yuan Ko attacked Gu Xuanwu and Kenzu. Gu Xuanwu and that Yuan Ko fought a great battle. Although Gu Xuanwu successfully killed his opponent, Gu Xuanwu was also heavily injured. In the end, he only recovered under Kenzu's care. Because he was saved by the Sword Ancestor, it was not good for Gu Xuanwu to kill the Sword Ancestor again. Thus, Gu Xuanwu expressed that he would first save the Sword Ancestor's life and repay him for saving his life before killing him to take revenge. The two of them intertwined and lived together for a long period of time. Later on, Gu Xuanwu temporarily left Kenzu for unknown reasons. At that time, Kenzu had already fallen deeply in love with Gu Xuanwu. The history after that was more or less the same as the official record. After Kenzu's temporary camp in WH City fell, he brought the remaining survivors and traveled a long distance to Old Beijing City. They lived there for 2 years. Finally, Old Beijing City was conquered by Yuan Ko. Kenzu was appointed in the face of danger and became the leader of humanity, starting a long war. For a long time, Kenzu and Gu Xuanwu did not meet again. Later on, when the new Beijing City was built, Gu Xuanwu and Qin Shi Huang appeared in front of Kenzu together, wanting to kill Kenzu together with Qin Shi Huang. In the end, Kenzu was invincible and defeated Gu Xuanwu and Qin Shi Huang together with his own power. In the end, a hidden flood-level Yuan Ko, who was also Gu Xuanwu's enemy, launched a sneak attack on Gu Xuanwu, intending to kill her while she was weak. At the critical moment, Kenzu used his own body to block the flood-level Yuan Ko's attack and fell into a coma. His life was in Gu Xuanwu's hands. After being saved by Kenzu twice, Gu Xuanwu could only look up to the sky and sigh. In the end, she gave up her hatred for Kenzu and turned to save Kenzu with Qin Shi Huang. That was how Kenzu managed to survive. After that, Gu Xuanwu, Kenzu, and Qin Shi Huang completely turned enemies into friends. They immediately swore to become brother and sister with different surnames and to never betray each other in this life. After that, the three of them went on adventures together. During this time, Kenzu became an Emperor Sword-level sword wielder, becoming the first Emperor Sword-level sword wielder of the human race. Gu Xuanwu also mastered his sword skills and became a flood-level mixed-blood human. In the end, Qin Shi Huang buried himself in a coffin due to the backlash from the art of immortality and fell into a deep sleep. After Qin Shi Huang fell into a deep sleep, Kenzu finally proposed to Gu Xuanwu on an extremely romantic night. Gu Xuanwu finally agreed to Kunzu's proposal, and the two of them held a grand wedding. The entire human race celebrated the union of the two of them. It was also because of Kunzu and Gu Xuanwu's combined power that they truly conquered the entire world. They beat up the elites of Yuan Kou to the point where they did not dare to show their faces and suppressed the entire world for a while. After that, Gu Xuanwu gave birth to Kunzu's only son, fleeting Tianhan. The couple lived in harmony for more than 10 years. However, one day Gu Xuanwu's secret was accidentally exposed. It was only then that the humans found out that Gu Xuanwu was actually a mixed-blood human and Yuan Kou. At that time, the humans were not as tolerant towards mixed bloods as they were now. This was because the humans at that time had barely survived the apocalypse and were filled with hatred towards Yuan Kou. They did not allow a mixed-blood human and Yuan Kou to become the wife of the highest human leader. They worked together to force Kunzu to divorce Gu Xuanwu and exile fleeting Tianhan and Gu Xuanwu's child to marry a human as his wife. Kunzu naturally did not agree to this and strongly objected to it. This gave an opportunity for the ambitious humans who were trying to steal Kunzu's highest leadership position. They joined forces with the other two sword emperors, as well as almost all the immortal sword-level sword-bearers, and launched an attack against the sword ancestor. In a fit of rage, the sword ancestor drew his sword and stood upright. With one sword, he fought against 10,000 swords, causing blood and flesh to fly everywhere. The humans were about to experience the most serious civil strife after the Great Apocalypse, and the top forces of the entire human race might be destroyed. For the sake of the overall situation, Gu Xuanwu finally left the sword ancestor with fleeting cold sky. Only then did the internal strife calm down under the mediation of a third party. However, the sword ancestor was deeply affected. From then on, he hid in Fleeting Time Mountain and never came out, no longer caring about human affairs. It was also at this time that the heavenly court descended from the dimensional gate. With 3 desolate level Yuan Kou, the heavenly court was extremely arrogant. With absolute power, they suppressed most of the other Yuan Kous and launched an unprecedented attack on Yanjing City. A total of 5 desolate-level Yuan Kous and 10 flood-level Yuan Kous launched an all-out attack on Yanjing City. Although the humans still had 3 Emperor Sword wielders without Kunzu, they were no match for 5 desolate-level Yuan Kous. Moreover, the dimensional defense system had just been developed at that time, and the energy limit was not as terrifying as it was now. The entire Yanjing City was in a precarious situation, and it looked like it was going to be destroyed. Only then did the humans remember Kunzu. 7 groups of sword-bearers broke out of Yanjing City and came to Fleeting Mountain, begging Kunzu to help the humans survive this disaster. However, Kunzu's door was still tightly shut, and he did not care about these people's pleas. The situation had reached its most critical point, and the humans had no other choice. The 2 Emperor Sword wielders who had participated in the attack on Kunzu rushed to Fleeting Mountain late at night and knelt in front of Kunzu's door. Without saying anything, they took out their swords and planned to commit suicide in front of Kunzu's door, using their lives to beg Kunzu to come out of the mountain. Finally, Kunzu chose to forgive them. He walked out of the mountain and returned to Yanjing City with the 2 Emperor Sword wielders. At that moment, Yanjing City was only left with the weak core area. Kunzu and all the other sword-bearers had gone through an arduous battle. They had killed the 2 Desolation-level Yuan Kous of the Heavenly Court, leaving only the Jade Emperor as the sole survivor. The other 2 Desolation-level Yuan Kous, who had come to help, were so scared that they peed their pants. This massive invasion had finally ended with Yuan Kou's defeat. Because the Heavenly Court had lost the 2 Desolation-level Yuan Kous, its power had become weaker. It could not suppress the other Yuan Kou's forces, and Yuan Kou itself was in chaos. After this catastrophe, Kunzu's power had deeply shocked all of the humans. There was no one among the humans who did not dare to oppose Kunzu anymore. Kunzu had also found the evil spirits and monsters that had been plotting in the dark and killed them all. Then, he made an agreement with all of the humans. No matter how many years had passed, humans were not allowed to point their swords at their own kind. Humans had to maintain absolute unity in order to survive in this tragic, chaotic world. At the same time, he also made an agreement that humans could not discriminate against humans and Yuan Ko's mixed blood. As long as these mixed blood's hearts were on the humans' side, humans had to treat them as their own kind. In short, there were many treaties and rules that still existed even now. They had become laws that affected humans for more than 1,000 years. In the years that followed, Kunzu began his journey to find the Black Tortoise and his son, fleeting Tianhan. No one knew what had happened in the past few years. Even the fleeting family's records did not have any record. They only knew that although Kunzu had not found the Black Tortoise, he had found his son, fleeting Tianhan, and brought him back. After that, there was the shocking battle that had led to Kunzu's disappearance. The humans who had lost Kunzu cried out in pain, and the surrounding Yuan Ko's forces began to move again. The remaining Jiandis were not strong enough to deal with the Yuan Ko's invasion. Fleeting Tianhan stood up at the most crucial moment. Although he was only an immortal sword-tier swordsman, he displayed a rare display of power that was equivalent to that of a desolation-level Yuan Ko. It was only then that the humans remembered that fleeting Tianhan actually had a quarter of Yuan Ko's bloodline in his body. He could also use Yuan Ko's method to become strong, and he did not have to be limited to being stronger than the sword mistress. With fleeting Tianhan's power, the humans finally fought to a draw with the Yuan Ko, and the power of the humans naturally passed into fleeting Tianhan's hands. Fleeting Tianhan had used various methods to consolidate power, and he had truly become the ruler of the humans. Just like the Qin Emperor, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, he had firm control over the entire human world. This was also the source of the fleeting family's power in the human world for 1,000 years. If Kunzu could be said to be the Han Dynasty's Gaozu, then fleeting Tianhan could be said to be the Han Dynasty's Emperor Gaozu. Fleeting Tianhan was the Han Dynasty's Emperor Wu, who had defeated the Xiongnu and created the Han Dynasty. Everyone thought that fleeting Tianhan would use his power to vindicate his mother and bring her back. However, to everyone's surprise, fleeting Tianhan announced that he would completely erase all information about the Gu Xuanwu. He even wanted to erase all human memories of the Gu Xuanwu, which led to the great cultural destruction. In the end, fleeting Tianhan succeeded. He successfully erased all information about the Gu Xuanwu. Apart from the sword mistresses who retained their memories of the Gu Xuanwu, the rest of the humans had completely forgotten about the Gu Xuanwu, until today. Of course, the fleeting family could not erase the record. Instead, they passed it down to their descendants in great detail. In the last part of the solid Black Tortoise's records, when fleeting Tianhan was about to pass away, the second-generation ancestor of the fleeting clan had summoned his son and grandson to his bedside and left them with these words. He said that in the future, an unknown time, a human called Guhan would be born. This human was very important to the fleeting family, and the fleeting family had to watch over him from afar to ensure that he could live until he reached adulthood. However, they could not interfere with his life. They had to let him grow up freely. Unless his life was threatened, they could not interfere with Guhan's life. However, if Guhan obtained the long-lost Qinpin sword of the Lu family, they had to do everything they could to snatch the Qinpin sword from him and destroy it. They could not allow the sword to remain in this world, or the entire human race would face the threat of extinction. At the same time, he asked the direct descendants of the Lionian family to carry a piece of the sword ancestor's sword soul mark at all times. Once they encountered Gilgamesh, they had to release the sword ancestor's sword soul mark and let the sword ancestor personally kill this old opponent. In the beginning, the fleeting family firmly remembered fleeting Tianhan's words. They spread out their tentacles throughout the world in search of that person called Guhan. In the end, after more than 900 years, the fleeting family found nothing. Gohan never appeared either. Gradually, the fleeting family let down their guard and no longer cared about this matter. The tentacles searching for Gohan also stopped. In the end, just as the fleeting family let down their guard, Gohan was born. It was only when Liu Ling went to Yuzhong City's sword pavilion in search of the Yixian sword that she met with Gohan and saved her life with Gohan's help that the fleeting family learned of Gohan's existence. They also learned that the Qinpin sword was in Gohan's hands. Although the fleeting family was careless, they did not dare to go against the will of their ancestors. They immediately sent Takasakarina to snatch the Qinpin sword away, which led to the battle in the Miling Mountain range. However, the heavens never followed the will of humans. In the end, not only did Gohan's Qinpin sword not get snatched away, it even absorbed the power of the severed green silk and became the twin sword lady, truly opening the door to invincibility for themselves. There was nothing much to say about what happened next. The fleeting family used the severed green silk as bait to lure Gohan into the fleeting family mountain. After knocking Gohan out, fleeting wooden fish personally examined Gohan's body and discovered that the Qinpin sword had completely fused with Gohan. If they wanted to snatch the sword away, they would definitely harm Gohan's life. This became a difficult choice. In the end, the fleeting family chose to observe Gohan and did their best to satisfy Gohan's requests. At the same time, they sent Takasakarina to keep an eye on Gohan. If she discovered anything wrong with Qinpin, she would immediately assassinate Gohan. Chapter 1274. At the same time, fleeting wooden fish even secretly extracted Gohan's blood and compared it to the fleeting family's DNA in an attempt to find the relationship between Gohan and the fleeting family. As Gohan's surname was Gu, the fleeting family had always suspected that Gohan was either Gu Xuanwu and Kenzu's child, or Gu Xuanwu and another man's child. However, no matter who it was, the child would still be related to the fleeting family by blood. In order to prove this, fleeting wooden fish extracted Gohan's blood. After the DNA test, the Liunian family came to the conclusion that Gohan was indeed related to the Liunian family by blood. Moreover, they were the direct descendants of the Liunian family with a gap of 27 to 28 generations. This discovery made the Liunian family terrified. They could not understand it. According to the result of the DNA test, Gohan should be a person who lived 1,000 years ago, the same generation as the sword ancestor. Otherwise, how could there be a gap of 27 to 28 generations? However, Gohan had clearly lived in the same era as them. Thinking back to the prophecy that Fleeting Cold had left behind, explaining Gohan's existence, the fleeting family guessed that Gohan was actually someone from 1,000 years ago. He might even be Gu Xuanwu's father, who had come to the future through a tunnel of time. That was why Fleeting Cold could predict Gohan's existence. With this discovery, the fleeting family's attitude towards Gohan completely changed. Even when Gohan asked for 10,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood, the fleeting family generously gave it to him. After all, it was a request from their ancestor, and the fleeting family was not unfilial to that extent. However, from then on, the fleeting family restricted the contact between Liunian Ling and Gohan, deeply afraid that they would fall in love with each other. However, the world was unpredictable. In the end, Gohan and Liunian Ling still entered the Shanhai Pass together. More importantly, Liunian Ling learned of the Gu Xuanwu's existence and reported the news to the Liunian clan. Only now did the Liunian family realize that it wasn't Gohan who had transmigrated from 1,000 years ago, but Gu Xuanwu who had transmigrated from 1,000 years later. There was no need to say more about what happened after that. When she met Gilgamesh, Liunian Ling firmly remembered Kenzu's last words and used the sword soul mark. Kenzu also understood his mission the moment he saw Gu Xuanwu. In order to be able to meet the person he loved in the past, and at the same time to settle the love and hatred between him and his lover, Kanzu kicked Gu Xuanwu into the door of truth and eternity. This shocking cycle of reincarnation had completely become a closed loop. Afterwards, Liuyan Ling fell deeply into Guhan's love, and told fleeting wooden fish that she wanted to be with Guhan even if it meant cutting ties with the fleeting family. Fleeting wooden fish was helpless. His granddaughter had already grown up, and he could no longer hide the truth. As such, he told Liuyan Ling all the fleeting family's deepest secrets, and left it up to Liuyan Ling to decide her own fate. After learning the truth, fleeting time sank into despair for 3 whole days. In the end, he decided to end his relationship with Gu Han that should never have existed. It was precisely because she wanted to understand her relationship with Guhan that Liuyan Ling told the whole story in one breath. There were no loopholes in the story, and it was a perfect match to Guhan's experiences. Guhan knew that Liuyan Ling was not lying to him, and that she was telling the truth. Many of the things that Guhan did not understand in his life were explained in that moment. While the matter between I Ching and Artoria was still an unknown secret, the Gu Xuanwu and the Lun Yen family's secrets were explained. Everything was within reason. In truth, Guhan had already guessed the core storyline of the story before Liuyan Ling revealed everything. Guhan had already guessed that the Gu Xuanwu had returned to the past to fall in love with Kanzu, and that the Lun Yen family was born. The reason why Kanzu sent the Gu Xuanwu into the door of truth and eternity for no reason, and even taught him the art of laws in the skyscraping 12 palaces, was because Kanzu knew that Guhan was his brother-in-law. In other words, Kanzu knew that Guhan was his father-in-law. That was why he worked so hard. The sword Maiden online was probably the reason why the Gu Xuanwu was able to find Kanzu so easily during the early stages of the apocalypse. The Gu Xuanwu did not experience many dungeons in the game, but he would definitely experience the game's initial dungeon. It was also through this initial dungeon that the Gu Xuanwu clearly understood everything that Kanzu had experienced in the early stages. Guhan even believed that the role that players played in the early stages was actually the role that the Gu Xuanwu had played back then. After helping Kanzu with the synchronization, he was attacked by Yuan Ko's steel tooth. The Gu Xuanwu, who had just passed through the door of truth and eternity, might have lost a lot of strength due to the time travel. He could not even defeat Steel Tooth, and was heavily injured and unconscious. In the end, he was saved by Kanzu, who had completed the synchronization. The reason why Kanzu could directly go to the museum to find the King of Yu, Go Jin Jian, was probably because of the hint given by the Gu Xuanwu. Or rather, it was the Gu Xuanwu who had commanded him to confirm Kanzu's identity. The fact that Kanzu was able to figure out all of the Sword Maiden's abilities and settings, as well as how to use and strengthen the Sword Maiden in an extremely short period of time, was probably because the Gu Xuanwu had brought it from 1,000 years in the future to 1,000 years in the past. Otherwise, based on the humans' critical situation at the time and their lack of understanding of the Sword Maiden, Guhan was worried that the humans might not even understand how to strengthen the Sword Maiden, or whether the Sword Maiden was trustworthy, and would have been wiped out by Yuan Ko. From this point of view, the Gu Xuanwu's time travel could be said to have saved the world. It was precisely because of her time travel that the humans grasped the Sword Maiden's combat power in the first place and used the power they could use to the extreme. Without the Gu Xuanwu's time travel, it was a huge question whether the era after 1,000 years would still exist. As a result, another closed cycle was formed. Guhan suddenly felt that he did not even have a reason to hate Kanzu. Without the Kanzu's step in front of the door of truth and eternity, perhaps there would not be the existence of humans now. Thinking of this, Guhan's heart suddenly became a lot more comfortable. Of course, there were still many other unanswered secrets, such as where did the Gu Xuanwu go after separating from Kanzu, and what happened? Most importantly, how did Guhan and Artoria give birth to the Gu Xuanwu? This was still a huge mystery, and Guhan could not find any clues. In addition, Guhan also felt that Takasaka Rina, the past water sword, was not ordinary. Her role was not as simple as Liu Yanling's story made it out to be. She was not a simple watcher at all. Otherwise, Takasaka Rina would not have become his sword maiden, nor would she know so many ancient secrets. Was it because the Liunian family was still hiding something from him, or was it because of Takasaka Rina's strange background that she had to hide something from the Liunian clan? Or was there even a force behind Takasaka Rina who used her as a pawn? These were all questions that Gohan needed to find out. Whatever the case, the relationship between Gohan and the Liunian family was now completely cleared up. This also made things extremely awkward for Gohan and Liunian Ling. Gohan believed that the Liunian family did not lie about this, and the DNA test could not be false. Fleeting Tianhan was the son of the Gu Xuanwu, which meant that he was Gohan's grandson. Fleeting Tianhan was the second-generation ancestor of the Liunian family. All the descendants of the Liunian family were of Fleeting Tianhan's bloodline, and Liunian Ling was no exception. This meant that Liunian Ling was actually the 27th generation descendant of the Gu Xuanwu. Although Liunian Ling thought that Gohan and the Gu Xuanwu were siblings, and Gohan was her great-great-uncle, Gohan was actually Liunian Ling's direct ancestor, and Liunian Ling was Gohan's 28th generation descendant. You already know the truth of the matter. Now you should understand why we can't be together. Liunian Ling raised her head to stop her tears from flowing. You're my ancestor, and your blood flows in my veins. I'm your descendant. We can't be together. Gohan didn't say anything. He lowered his head, and no one knew what he was thinking. Haha. Do you feel a lot of pain? A lot of resentment? Liunian Ling smiled bitterly. These are all my feelings back then. I'll let you have a taste of them. Alright, I'm leaving. If you're willing, you can visit the Liunian family. After all, the people there are your descendant. However, it's impossible for us to meet again. What about in the future? What do you plan to do in the future? Gohan raised his head and asked Liunian Ling. Me? I'm probably going to find someone to marry. Liunian Ling smiled bitterly. I'm the only one left of the Liunian family's direct bloodline. I must inherit the Liunian family. It just so happens that the noble scholar family has sent someone to propose marriage to my grandfather. I've already agreed. I'll marry him and live the rest of my life well. Is that so? Gohan stood up and looked down at Liunian Ling, who was only wearing 2 undergarments. What if I don't agree? What if I don't agree to you marrying that person? What right do you have to disagree? Liunian Ling said hatefully. Didn't you say it just now? I'm your 28th generation ancestor. Since the ancestor said that you can't marry him, do you still dare to disobey the ancestor's orders? Gohan said coldly. Gohan, don't go too far. We're only related by blood, yet you want to order me around? Keep dreaming. Fleeting Cold stomped his foot on the ground, and was about to leave through the void gate when the void gate opened up. However, she hadn't expected Gohan to follow right after Liunian Ling entered the void gate. They were less than 1,000th of a second apart, so Liunian Ling didn't even have time to close the void gate. The two of them entered the void together. What are you doing? Why are you still bothering me? Didn't I already tell you everything clearly? It's impossible for us to be together. I'm begging you to let me go, my ancestor Gohan. Liunian Ling screamed. Maybe I really am your ancestor. Gohan hugged Liunian Ling's waist and rested his chin on Liunian Ling's shoulder. He whispered into Liunian Ling's ear, but you just said that we're only related by blood. I don't have the right to order you around. You've never really treated me as your ancestor. Ling, I just figured it out. After 28 generations of inheritance, the blood in our bodies, or DNA, has thinned to 1/268435456. This is no different from 2 ordinary lovers. We can still be together. Gohan murmured. You're crazy. You're a lunatic. You're a pervert. We're obviously direct relatives. How can we be ordinary lovers? Liunian Ling struggled to say. No, you're wrong. According to the Xianyuan sword, all humans in the world are descendants of Gongsun Xianyuan. Does that mean all humans in the world are committing incest? Gohan hugged Liuyan Ling even tighter. Let go of those unnecessary worries. Whether it's the laws before or after the Great Destruction, all the rules state that we're related by blood within 3 generations. We've already had 28 generations. Why do you still care about these useless things? Liuyan Ling didn't say anything, but her body began to tremble violently. This meant that a drastic change had occurred in her heart. She had been persuaded by Gohan. The psychological defense that she had persevered in her heart for 2 years was breaking down. Gohan understood that this was the most critical moment. He simply turned Liuyan Ling's body around in his arms. Their eyes met. Then, he kissed Liuyan Ling's lips fiercely. "Give me your tongue. I'll let you know what love is," Gohan said in a low voice. This time, Gohan didn't put his tongue in like last time. Instead, he waited patiently outside Liuyan Ling's lips, waiting for Liuyan Ling to take the initiative to stick out her tongue. After an unknown amount of time, Liuyan Ling's lips finally began to move. After a long struggle, they slowly opened, and a small moist corner of her mouth sighed slightly. Gohan finally waited for the opportunity he needed, and also waited for the moment when Liuyan Ling opened her heart. Gohan bit down and sucked Liuyan Ling's lips without hesitation. The two of them finally had a real tongue kiss. This time, Liuyan Ling didn't resist. The two of them embraced and kissed in the void. Their lips and tongues intertwined. Their hands groped each other's body. Their naked skin began to turn slightly red and hot, and a warm current intertwined between their bodies. Just as the situation was getting better and better, and the story of bloodline and love that had been entangled for 2 years was about to come to a perfect end, the entire void suddenly became extremely unstable. A series of violent waves completely woke the two of them up. Not good. The void fluctuations are so powerful. Could it be that there's a powerful existence fighting in the void nearby? Liuyan Ling was the first to react. She quickly put on some clothes and wiped the saliva off her mouth. She glared fiercely at Gohan, and began to search for the place where the battle took place. Sigh. I've failed at the last step. Gohan's efforts had failed at the last step, but his heart had already relaxed a lot. At the very least, the line of defense in Liuyan Ling's heart had been mostly broken by him. With the passage of time, Liuyan Ling would definitely completely let go of those unnecessary worries, and the two of them would finally have a happy ending. So, Gohan revealed a smile and chased after Liuyan Ling, chasing after the place where the fluctuations were the most violent. Liuyan Ling and Gohan finally found the place where the battle took place. Then, they saw an incomparably shocking scene between Gohan and Liuyan Ling. On one side of the battle was Long Shijiendi, who had just gone to Mermaid Island, and the pirate sword Immortal. On the other side was a snow-white woman with an ice-cold temperament, like a huge block of ice. Beside this woman was a woman with a pair of black wings and a white bone sword in her hand. This woman in white was actually a sword-bearer. This was actually a civil war between sword-bearers. Chapter 1275. Gohan. Miss Ling. When Long Shijiendi and the pirate sword Immortal saw the appearance of Gohan, their faces immediately revealed expressions of surprise and surprise. Originally, the two of them were already on the verge of despair. Unexpectedly, they could still meet Liuyan Ling and Gohan in the void. It was just like seeing two straws in their despair. An immortal sword-grade sword-bearer and a spirit sword-grade sword-bearer? When the female sword-bearer on the opposite saw the appearance of Gohan and Liuyan Ling, her brows instantly wrinkled. She looked Gohan and Liuyan Ling up and down, and a calculating expression appeared on her face. Obviously, she was calculating the impact of the appearance of Gohan and Liuyan Ling on the overall situation of the battle. Who is she? Liuyan Ling and Gohan immediately joined up with Long Shijiendi and the pirate sword Immortal. At the same time, they looked vigilantly at the woman on the opposite side and asked, "Look carefully. She is an old figure who appeared in our textbooks since childhood. It's impossible that you don't know her." The pirate sword immortal said. The personal shield outside his body was flickering, and it was obviously on the verge of breaking. "It's Mingyuan Jiandi," Gohan said in a deep voice. After hearing the pirate sword immortal's words, Gohan immediately remembered. Wasn't this exactly the same as the great traitor of humanity, Mingyuan Jiandi, described in his primary school textbooks? Mingyuan Jiandi. When Gohan's voice fell, Liuyan Ling sucked in a breath of conscience. Unexpectedly, she could actually see this great god with her own eyes. At the same time, her heart was even more puzzled. Hasn't Mingyuan Jiandi been hiding in Mingyuan City? Why would they chase after you? Indeed, ever since the mystic Iris Sword Emperor betrayed the human race and chose to become a bandit, he rebuilt Mystic Iris City in the place where Gillen City used to be. After that, he quietly lived in the city and rarely left it. He also tried his best to avoid conflict with the human race. Ever since the human race failed in their crusade, they rarely provoked the greatest traitor in human history. The number of times Mingyuan Jiandi had left Mingyuan City in the past few centuries could be counted on one hand, and the number of times he had attacked human sword-bearers was even less. Therefore, Gohan and Liuyan Ling simply couldn't understand why Mingyuan Jiandi would violate his centuries-old code of conduct and come to attack Longshu Jiandi and the pirate sword immortal. "Mingyuan Jiandi, let me introduce you. This is Miss Liuyan Ling of the Liuyan family. This is our human's new Sea Emperor, His Majesty Gohan." Let's not talk about Miss Ling. As the heir of the Liuyan family, she must have the strength to fight an Emperor sword rank at Immortal sword rank. And His Majesty Gohan has personally killed 2 Flood rank Yuan Ko. Do you still want to fight with us? Your Gohan. Mingyuan Jiandi's cold face was not fixed on Longshu Jiandi, but on Gohan in an instant. After carefully looking Gohan up and down, Mingyuan Jiandi said coldly, "Is it you who captured my servant? Is it you who hurt my precious disciple? What's going on here?" Longshu Jiandi, the pirate sword immortal, and Liuyan Ling looked at Gohan at the same time. They never thought that Gohan had been entangled with Mingyuan Jiandi for a long time. "If the servant you're talking about is Yi Wenjun, then I've already killed this disloyal and unjust traitor. As for your disciple, I haven't settled this matter with you yet. How dare you bewitch my friend Ife? Where is she now? Hand her over," Gohan said in the same cold tone. "Ife, you're talking about Sister Ife. She has now become Mingyuan Jiandi's disciple?" Gohan's words surprised Liuyan Ling. She had never thought that her former love rival and good friend Song Ife would actually become Mingyuan Jiandi's disciple. The world was really too chaotic. "I don't know what's going on here, but at least from the current signs, it's very likely that she has gone astray," Gohan said very sadly. "What a good astray! What a heartless man! It's a waste of my disciple's love for you. Go to hell." Mingyuan Jiandi did not give Gohan a chance to respond at all. In an instant, the white-boned sword lady next to her appeared next to Gohan. "Be careful." Liuyan Ling's body instantly emitted tens of thousands of sword chi. She fully displayed the billion sword skill, trying to repel the white-boned sword lady's attack. However, when the two forces intersected, the sword chi shot out by Liuyan Ling suddenly began to burn fiercely as if it had been ignited. It blossomed into a pale white flame. In the end, all the sword chi was burned up, and the white-boned sword lady's blade had already pierced into Gohan's body. Gohan let out a scream. A big bloody hole instantly appeared on his left shoulder. Blood with golden threads gushed out of the hole, and instantly Gohan was bathed in blood. So weak? Mingyuan Jiandi saw that she had easily injured Gohan, and her brows instantly wrinkled as she muttered to herself. It was clear that Mingyuan Jiandi had some understanding of Gohan's famous name. She knew that Gohan's strength was extraordinary. Therefore, she had never thought that her sword would be able to injure Gohan. Her strength was a bit too weak. Gohan. Liu Nianling's sword followed closely behind, and pushed aside the white-boned sword lady's sword. At the same time, Long Jiandi and the pirate sword immortal also rushed over, and firmly guarded Gohan from the left and right, ensuring that Gohan would not be successfully attacked by Ming Yuan Jiandi again. Brother Gohan, what's wrong with you today? Where's your personal shield? At the same time, seeing that Gohan's body had been pierced by Ming Yuan Jiandi's white-boned sword lady without any obstruction, Long Jiandi asked with incomparable astonishment. Even if it was an ancient sword-rank sword wielder, facing the white-boned sword lady's attack, the personal shield around their body would at least be able to block it. In this way they could at least delay for 0 seconds, giving them enough time to rush over to support. My sword lady is not by my side. Gohan said with a bitter smile, which immediately made Long Jiandi and the pirate sword immortal eat a funny look, and almost fall in the void. I say, Brother Gohan, what the hell are you doing? Coming to such a dangerous place like the void, and you don't even bring along your sword lady. What if you accidentally stay in the void forever? The sword wielder had to rely on the power of the sword lady to break through the void, but the sword lady's return sword could only be carried out in the same space. If the sword wielder was in the void, but the sword lady was in the real world, then the return sword could not be performed. Without the sword lady by his side, even if he was an emperor sword rank sword wielder, he would probably be sealed in the void. Unless another sword wielder found him, he would be trapped in the void until he died. Gohan was also very helpless. When he went to chat with Liu Nianling, Gohan was afraid that the existence of the sword lady would make the two of them feel very awkward, so he first left all his sword ladies in Ocean Emperor Palace, and he went to meet Liu Nianling alone. He thought that there was no danger in the vicinity of Ocean Emperor Palace, and even if there was danger, his sword lady could immediately return to her sword. However, Liu Nianling wanted to escape through the void, so Gohan had no choice but to break into the void with Liu Nianling, which was why such a terrible situation had occurred. Otherwise, with Gohan's ability and the support of the sword lady, how could Gohan not have been able to dodge the white-boned sword lady's sword? Ming Yuan Jiandi's gaze finally moved away from Gohan and turned to Long Jiandi. Junior, give me what you got, or the four of you won't be able to leave here alive today. By the way, there's also that friend of yours. She escaped 3 years ago, but I didn't expect her to fall into my hands again. 3 years ago, I still had a trace of pity for her and didn't want to kill her. But now I will kill this woman without hesitation. Long Jiandi, what the hell is going on? Gohan struggled to stand up while clutching the wound on his body. You used your body to take a hit from my Ming Yuan's sword, but you're still alive. Ming Yuan Jiandi's pupils instantly shrank when she saw Gohan stand up. She didn't expect Gohan to be able to stand up from the ground. It turned out that the white-boned sword lady was the Ming Yuan sword, and the Ming Yuan sword's attack had a special characteristic. The power of the Ming Yuan sword could spread through the blood to other parts of the body. Therefore, even if the Nether Iris sword managed to make a small cut, the Nether Iris sword's power would still be able to damage every part of the body. In the end, it would cause organ failure and cause death. It might not be able to deal with Yuan Ko, who had a strong physique, but it was extremely effective against humans who were inherently weak. Unless it was an Emperor sword wielder with a sovereign bloodline, even an immortal sword wielder would die from heart paralysis within a few seconds if they were stabbed by the Nether Iris sword and did not enter the medical bay in time. I don't have many things on me, but I do have a lot of sovereign blood. Gohan smiled, took out an sovereign blood capsule, and swallowed it. The wound on his body quickly healed. Of course, this was just a superficial lie. The real reason was that Gohan's physique was already at the meteor stage, Yuan Ko's physique. Therefore, the power of the Mingyuan sword could not kill Gohan. What a waste of heavenly resources! When Mingyuan Jiendi saw Gohan consume the sovereign blood, her expression instantly turned ugly. It was as if the sovereign blood had touched her reverse scale. Hee, I heard that ever since the Ming Iris Sword Emperor became a traitor to the human race and chose to become a bandit, your blood has turned from a golden emperor's blood to a mercury-like dark blood. Not only can your blood no longer heal any injuries, but it's also poisonous to all living beings. The divine blood that saved lives has turned into a dark blood that takes away lives. Ming Iris Sword Emperor, you must be very unwilling. Liu Ling chuckled. Chapter 1276. The Liu family is really well informed. You even know my secret. Mingyuan Jiandi's face changed several times. Finally, she waved her sleeves and said, I don't want to waste any more time with you. Give me what I want. Otherwise, I'll show you how horrible Jiendi, who has been cultivating for 500 years, is. Mingyuan Jiandi's cold face showed an extremely impatient expression. At the same time, her words also made Longsher Jiendi and the pirate sword immortal look frightened. He looked at Liu Ling and Gohan beside him, and finally gritted his teeth and said, If you give Anna back to us, I'll give you what you want. Otherwise, even if the four of us die here, that thing will be lost in the dimensional space forever. Even Kanzu couldn't escape from the dimensional space. You can't get it back. Okay. Mingyuan Jiendi nodded, and a black light broke through the void and flew out of her dimensional pocket. Seeing that black light, Gohan's pupils shrank instantly. He recognized that black light. It was the strange black sword that he had used when fighting with Yi Wenjun. After a while, Mingyuan Jiendi opened the void, and a figure came in from the void door, holding Lu Anna, who was in a coma, in his arms. When Gohan saw that figure, his pupils instantly froze, because at this time, the person holding Lu Anna was none other than Gohan's good friend, Song Yifei. It was Song Yifei who looked quite calm. Even if Gohan suddenly appeared in front of her, she did not move or show any emotion. She had completely inherited the temperament of Mingyuan Jiendi, as if she had become a piece of ice. Master, I've brought you the person you want, Song Yifei said respectfully to Mingyuan Jiendi. Young Longsher, I've brought the person you want. Give me what I want, Mingyuan Jiendi said. Alright. Longsher Jiendi gritted his teeth and took out a pure golden transparent crystal from his dimensional pocket. Seeing this crystal, Gohan and Liu Ling's eyes instantly widened to the size of cowbells. Imperial Zerg! Liu Ling exclaimed. It turned out that this transparent golden gem was an Emperor-type dimensional crystal. This was the first time in her life that she had seen a real Emperor-type dimensional crystal. This was the second time Gohan had seen an Imperial Zerg. He had even owned one for a short period of time. 3 years ago, Gohan had even obtained a used Emperor crystal from Loki. However, in order to forge Qi Dian, Gohan had used up the Emperor Zerg dimensional crystal. It was no wonder that Mingyuan Jiendi would abandon his usual style of doing things and pursue Longsher Jiendi and the pirate sword immortal relentlessly. It turned out that there was an Emperor Zerg dimensional crystal that attracted the attention of both sides. Give it to me. Seeing this Emperor Zerg dimensional crystal, even Mingyuan Jiendi, who was as cold as ice, could not help but show a fiery expression on his face. He immediately ordered Longsher Jiendi. I can give it to you, but you have to give Anna to us first. Longsher Jiendi was not stupid. Of course, he knew that whoever handed over their things first was a fool. How about this? Mingyuan Jiendi hesitated for a moment. I'll let my disciple hold Anna, and you let your Poseidon hold the Emperor Zerg. Both sides will exchange at the same time. This. Longsher Jiendi hesitated for a moment before turning to ask Gohan, Brother Gohan, is this Song Yifei someone who has feelings for you? Yes. Gohan hesitated for a moment before nodding and admitting. Humph! In response to Gohan's admission, Liu Ling let out a disdainful snort. A strong sour smell could be smelled by everyone around. Then there's no problem. I don't think this Song Yifei will take the opportunity to hurt you, Brother Gohan. I'll leave everything to Brother Gohan. Long Shi Jindy sighed and handed the Emperor's Zerg to Gohan. This is actually an Emperor's Zerg with abundant energy. The moment this Emperor's Zerg dimensional crystal was held in Gohan's hand, Gohan felt a powerful and suffocating sword essence. This was definitely an Emperor's Zerg that had just been mined and had reached its maximum energy value. At the same time, it was also the most valuable Emperor's Zerg. Hurry up! On the other side, Mingyuan Jiandi urged while Song Yifei began to walk forward slowly with Anna in his arms. Gohan smiled bitterly and walked over with the Emperor's Zerg. After more than a minute, he and Song Yifei finally met in the void after 3 years. Yifei, long time no see. How have you been for the past 3 years? Gohan could not help but ask with concern when he finally saw Song Yifei face to face. Give it to me. Song Yifei ignored Gohan's concern. His face was still as cold as ice. He did not have any feelings for Gohan at all. It was as if he did not know Gohan at all. Sigh. Gohan let out a long sigh. He thought he was smart, but how could he control this world? Gohan held the Emperor's Zerg in his palm and placed his other hand on Anna's waist. He said calmly, I'll count to 123. Let go at the same time. No need. You, Gohan, would not do such a despicable thing. Song Yifei pushed Anna into Gohan's arms with his hand and then took the Emperor's Zerg away from Gohan's hand. Master, I got it back. Song Yifei quickly returned to Mingyuan Jiandi's side and handed the Emperor's Zerg to Mingyuan Jiandi. Good, good, good. Looking at the precious dimension crystal in his hand, Mingyuan Jiandi, who had always been calm, actually said the word, good 3 times in a row. Unexpectedly, Mingyuan Jiandi, who had obtained the dimension crystal, kept his promise and stopped attacking Long Shi Jiandi and the others. Instead, he left directly. What a pity! Seeing that such a precious Emperor's Zerg was lost in his hands, Long Shi Jiandi could do nothing but let out a long sigh. In the end, they opened the void door together and returned to reality. Is it already the next morning? When everyone came out of the void, they found that the sun had slowly risen in the east, and a new day had begun. It's not far from Sea Emperor Palace. Why don't you come back to my place and sit down? Gohan invited. Long Shi Jiandi and the pirate Sword Immortal nodded, and the 4 of them returned to Sea Emperor Palace together. After a short rest, Gohan and Liu Ling finally learned from Long Shi Jiandi what happened after they left Sea Emperor Palace. Yesterday, they went to Mermaid Island under the leadership of the pirate Sword Immortal. It took a lot of effort and almost a fight before they met the 17th princess, or rather, the 17th prince. When the 17th princess saw the pirate Sword Immortal and the others appear with Lu Anna, she instantly understood everything. Without saying anything, she handed the Emperor's Zerg to the pirate Sword Immortal. It turned out that the 17th princess, or rather, the 17th prince, did not like the Dragon King of the East Sea at all. He did not want to use his chrysanthemum to serve an old dragon who was old enough to be his great-grandfather. However, in the face of the power of the Dragon King of the 4 Seas, Mermaid Island had no right to refuse. So when he entered the bridal chamber, he faced the window, looked at the corals outside, and complained. As a result, Lu Anna happened to pass by the 17th princess and heard her complaints. So, Lu Anna took the initiative to find the 17th princess, and said that she had a plan to let the 17th princess return to Mermaid Island. She only hoped that the 17th princess could help her keep something. In the future, when a pirate Sword Immortal or Long Shi Jiandi came to find her, she could hand that thing over to the pirate Sword Immortal. The 17th princess agreed on the spot, so there was the adultery performance, and the Emperor Zerg fell into the hands of the 17th princess. At the same time, when the two of them shared the same bed, Lu Anna also told the 17th princess about what happened to her. It turned out that when Lu Anna was heading from London to Yuzhong City, she suddenly found that there were strong fluctuations in the void near the sea. At the same time, the sea was constantly trembling violently. Obviously, a battle was going on in the distance. So, Lu Anna quietly approached the battlefield, only to find that one of the overlords of the Sea Clan, the flood-level Yuan Ko, was fighting with a sword-bearer. When Lu Anna saw that one side was a sword-bearer, she immediately jumped out to help. As a result, after fighting for a while, she found that the sword-bearer was actually the traitor of mankind, Minyuan Jiendi. However, probably because Lu Anna had helped her, Minyuan Jiendi was not hostile to Lu Anna at this time. On the contrary, he helped Lu Anna block several attacks from the Dark North Tortoise. Thinking of Minyuan Jiendi's behavior of not hurting human beings after its betrayal, Lu Anna gradually let go of the grudge in her heart and fought side by side with Minyuan Jiendi. In the end, Lu Anna found that her appearance was superfluous because Minyuan Jiendi's strength was extremely terrifying. In less than half an hour, he seriously injured the Dark North Tortoise, the flood-level Yuan Ko, which was famous for its defense, and fell into a state of dying. With or without Lu Anna's help, it did not matter to Minyuan Jiendi. Just when Lu Anna thought that she had succeeded, something happened. The dying Dark North Tortoise suddenly spat out a golden pearl from its mouth. At the same time, it activated all its power, opened a nether storm, and forcibly wrapped Lu Anna in it. When Lu Anna broke free from the nether storm, she found that she was thousands of miles away from the battlefield and appeared near Mermaid Island. It was not until then that Lu Anna realized that the golden pearl that the Dark North Tortoise spat out was the dimension crystal of the Emperor type. According to Lu Anna's guess, Minyuan Jiendi must have learned through some channels that there was an Emperor type hidden in the Dark North Tortoise's body and wanted to get this Emperor type. The Dark North Tortoise knew that it was going to die, but it did not want the Emperor type to fall into the hands of its enemy, so it took the initiative to give the Emperor type to Lu Anna. At the same time, it used the last of its strength to send Lu Anna away, so that Minyuan Jiendi could not find her in a short time. So at this time, there were two choices in front of Lu Anna. She could either wait where she was and give the Emperor type to Minyuan Jiendi. They could either escape with the Emperor Zergs to the human base cities. The original purpose of Lu Anna's trip was to get the Emperor type that appeared in Yuzhong City. Now that there was a dimension crystal that was more precious than the Emperor type, and Minyuan Jiendi was a traitor to human beings, it was self-evident what choice Lu Anna would make. Chapter 1277. After obtaining the Imperial Zerg, Lu Anna immediately attempted to escape back to London. However, Lu Anna never expected that Minyuan Jiendi would catch up with her so quickly. Seeing that she was about to be caught by Minyuan Jiendi, Lu Anna, who happened to run into the East Sea Dragon King's wedding procession, suppressed her disgust for the Sea Clan and forcibly joined the procession. Sure enough, seeing that the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas were there, Minyuan Jiendi did not dare to make a move because he was afraid of the primordial spiritual treasures in their hands. He could only hide in the dark and observe. Minyuan Jiendi knew that Lu Anna could not hide in the Dragon Palace of the East Sea Dragon King for a long time. As long as Lu Anna left the East Sea Dragon Palace, it would be time for Minyuan Jiendi to make a move. Lu Anna was very clear about this, so she handed the Imperial Zerg to the 17th princess for protection. She opened the void and pretended to be carrying the Imperial Zerg as she began to flee with all her might. The 17th princess did not know what happened after that, but Gohan and the others could guess that Minyuan Jiendi must have caught up with Lu Anna in the end. A huge battle broke out between the two sides, and Lu Anna escaped to Yuzhong City through the Sword Lady's self-sacrifice. Minyuan Jiendi did not dare to make a move on Yuzhong City, so this matter was temporarily put on hold. After hearing the news, Gohan asked Long Shurjendi and the pirate sword immortal, "Your Majesty Long Shur, pirate sword immortal, did you encounter Mingyuan Jiandi's attack as soon as you left Mermaid Island?" "That's right. How did you know? Were you there too?" The pirate sword immortal asked in confusion. "Do I still need to be there?" It's easy to guess that Mingyuan Jiendi must have analyzed the clues after the incident and found out that the Imperial Zerg was either on Mermaid Island or hidden in the East Sea Dragon Palace. Mingyuan Jiendi must have sent people to keep an eye on these two places. He even subdued the dragon ladies from the Dragon Palace and made them his spies to help him find news about the Imperial Zergs. The moment Anna appeared, Mingyuan Jiendi was already waiting for news. "When he found out that you were heading to Mermaid Island, he waited for you to come out," Gohan said indifferently. Long Shurjendi and the pirate sword immortal helplessly nodded, apparently agreeing with Gohan's analysis and feeling that this was the case. "Dare I ask your Majesty Long Shur, what is the current strength of that Mingyuan Jiendi?" Gohan asked Long Shurjendi. "Very strong." Hearing Gohan's question, Long Shurjendi's expression instantly became extremely solemn and he said in a heavy tone, "Very strong. The pirate sword immortal and I couldn't fight against her even if we joined forces. We could only run away. She even has a skill that can seal the void." "After the pirate sword immortal and I entered the void, we couldn't break the void and escape. If you hadn't come, I'm afraid the pirate sword immortal and I would have died in her hands in a few hours. She's actually so strong." Gohan frowned. When Mingyuan Jiendi defected to the humans, he was just an ordinary Imperial sword wielder. He was at most the same level as the current Long Shurjendi. However, after a few hundred years, Mingyuan Jiendi had become so strong that he could kill Long Shurjendi and the pirate sword immortal. To some extent, Mingyuan Jiendi could already be ranked in the top 10 of the Imperial sword wielder ranking. Forget it, it's just an Imperial seed. As long as Anna's matter is solved safely, we'll be satisfied. The pirate sword immortal sighed and then said with a satisfied expression. It seemed that finding Lu Anna had eased a big part of his heart. "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Gohan shook his head and said, "Now that even Mingyuan Jiendi has broken his usual habits, left Mingyuan City, and even attacked humans, I'm afraid there's a deeper secret hidden in this." "What's so strange about this? Is an Imperial seed not worth Mingyuan Jiendi attacking? In order to snatch an Imperial seed, it's natural for him to fight with humans," the pirate sword immortal said with a cold snort. "I think you might have overlooked something." Gohan sighed. "Do you remember 300 years ago, when Tianheng's sword immortal passed by Mingyuan City with an Imperial seed? Mingyuan Jiendi treated him with respect and did not make things difficult for him. It was also an Imperial seed, so why was Mingyuan Jiendi not interested in it 300 years ago? Why did he make such a big fuss 300 years later, even if he did not hesitate to attack a human Imperial sword wielder? What do you think, Gohan?" Hearing Gohan say this, Long Shurjendi also felt that something was wrong. Things like Imperial seeds have never been of much use to Yuan Ko. Other than Loki, Yuan Ko has rarely shown interest in Imperial seeds. It can be seen that the dimensional crystal is useless to Yuan Ko. Mingyuan Jiendi has now become Yuan Ko, so I don't think he covets the dimensional crystal. That's why he gave it to Tianheng's sword immortal as a gift. But now that the dimensional crystal is suddenly useful to Mingyuan Jiendi, I think there must be a very important secret hidden in it. That's why Mingyuan Jiendi did such an unusual thing. If this secret is only good for Mingyuan Jiendi, then it's fine. But if it's related to the survival of the entire human race, then handing over the Imperial seed to Mingyuan Jiendi this time will be a disaster for future generations. Gohan sighed. Long Shurjendi and the pirate sword immortal fell silent at the same time. They had obviously realized that Gohan was right. If they handed over the Imperial seed so easily this time, If there were any big problems in the future, everything would be troublesome. Fine. If there are any problems now, only Longshore and I can handle it. You two little guys should grow up quickly. If you two can become Emperor Swords, then the human race will have 3 Emperor Sword level sword bearers. No, with your disciple, there will be 4 Emperor Sword level sword bearers. Then, even if Mingyuan Jiandi hatches a big conspiracy, with our strength, we can suppress it. The future will fall on your shoulders. The pirate sword immortal said very irresponsibly. There was no such thing as pushing the blame to others in this world. By the way, Gohan and Ling, why did you two appear in the void? And Gohan didn't bring the sword lady with him. Did something happen to you two? Longshore Jiandi, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. Longshore Jiandi's words hit Gohan and Liuyan Ling's Achilles' heel. Liuyan Ling's face suddenly turned red. She lowered her head and couldn't say a word. Instead, Gohan smiled very easily and said, "It's nothing, internal conflicts in the family have been dealt with." Internal conflicts in the family. The pirate sword immortal's eyes were filled with the word gossip. Just as he was about to ask for an explanation, he was pulled away by Longshore Jiandi. The internal conflicts of the Lunyan family, Longshore Jiandi didn't want to have anything to do with it. The Emperor Palace of the Sea was not a place to stay for long. After Gohan handed over the Emperor Palace to the people sent by the Dragon Kings of the 4 Seas, he left with Liuyan Ling, Longshore Jiandi, and the pirate sword immortal on the same day. Fearing that Jiandi would attack them on the way, the 4 of them and Wen Meiyun, Gohan's subordinates, took a dragon carriage together. When they saw the land, it was time to say goodbye. Your Majesty, Miss Ling, we are going back to London. Goodbye. After a brief farewell to the pirate sword immortal, Longshore Jiandi left with Lu Anna in a hurry. They still wanted to improve Lu Anna's IQ, so they had to go back to London immediately. Goodbye, the 2 of us. Liuyan Ling rolled her eyes at Gohan and said bluntly, "You go back to your Yuzhong city, and I go back to my Yanjing city." "No. The 2 of us have to travel together," Gohan said with a smile. "What do you want to do? Don't you think you have disturbed me enough?" Liuyan Ling said with great dissatisfaction. "No." Gohan shook his head and patted his dimensional pocket at the same time. "I still have something very important to give to Yanjing City." "What important thing can you have?" Liuyan Ling said disdainfully. "This thing of mine is very important," Gohan said solemnly. "As long as I show it to them, all the immortal sword holders in Yanjing City will rush to kneel in front of me. Hey! Don't go too far," Liuyan Ling said with a look of disgust. "Then let's make a bet. If I can really make all the immortal sword holders in Yanjing City kneel in front of me and thank me, you will marry me and become my woman. If I can't do that, I will never appear in front of you again and completely give up on my grudge with your Lunyan family. I promise to stay away from your Lunyan family for the rest of my life. How about it?" "What do you mean, my Lunyan family? What grudges with the Lunyan family? Isn't it our Lunyan family? Do you still have the face to talk about grudges with your descendants?" Fleeting Time Lin said with a mischievous smile. "So are you going to bet or not?" Gohan ignored Liuyan Ling's mockery and went straight to the point. "Bet? Why not?" Liuyan Ling snorted. "This is a bet you want to make with me. If you lose, I hope you can fulfill your promise and stop bothering me." When Liuyan Ling said that, Gohan and Liuyan Ling heaved a sigh of relief. Liuyan Ling had fought alongside Gohan before, so she knew Gohan's abilities very well. How could Liuyan Ling not know how terrifying Gohan's abilities were? Since he was confident in making this bet with her, then there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would win. So rather than saying that Liuyan Ling was making a bet with Gohan, it was more like she was finding an excuse to agree to Gohan's bet. "Hey, Chidian, looks like your most troublesome love rival has appeared." The celestial extinguishing sword nudged Chidian's arm playfully beside Gohan. Qi lowered its head. No one knew what it was thinking. Chapter 1278. The dragon carriage flew all the way to Yanjing City's city gate, and under the gazes of the people around it, it slowly descended. After dropping Gohan and the others on the ground, it quickly left. Although the dragon carriage was faster and safer than a hovercraft, it had to be set off from the sea, which was extremely inconvenient to use. Therefore, Gohan did not have the intention to continue using the dragon carriage, and directly sent it back. Your Majesty Poseidon. Miss Ling. Thanks to the live broadcast service, when Gohan and Liuyan Ling entered Yanjing City, several guards at the city gate immediately recognized Gohan and Liuyan Ling, and greeted them respectfully. Let's go. Gohan smiled. He had already felt that his identity had become completely different among humans. Before he became Poseidon, how many people in Yanjing City could recognize him? But now, even the gatekeeper at the city gate could recognize him immediately. This meant that Gohan had completely made a name for himself among the humans. He had taken a solid step towards ascending to the throne and leading the entire human society in the future. You're very proud of yourself? Liuyan Ling sensed the change in Gohan's mood, and said somewhat mischievously. Yes. Isn't it worth being proud of? Gohan still admitted very honestly, then took out his hovercraft from his dimensional pocket, and clapped his hands at Liuyan Ling. Get in! What are you doing in Yanjing City? Sitting in Gohan's car, Liuyan Ling asked, puzzled. I've said it before, I'm here to deliver something, Gohan said with a smile. As for what it is, I can't tell you now. When we reach the core area of Yanjing City, you'll know. What are you doing, so mysterious? I can't be bothered with you, Liuyan Ling said unwillingly. At the same time, in the core area of London, the great Sun Sword Immortal who was working received a report from the city gate. What? That Sea Emperor and Miss Ling have come to Yanjing City? Hearing the report from the city gates, the great Sun Sword Immortal was confused. Liuyan Ling's return to Yanjing City was easy to explain. After all, Yanjing City could be considered a base of the Liuyan clan. But why did Gohan, the newly appointed Sea Emperor, come to Yanjing City as well? Could it be that he was here to show off? Ask the transportation department to keep an eye on Poseidon's whereabouts. Inform me when they arrive at the Sword Committee. I want to welcome them personally. As the chairman of Yanjing City's Sword Committee, the great Sun Sword Immortal was not someone who would easily welcome others. Unless it was Long Shirjiendi or fleeting wooden fish, the great Sun Sword Immortal would not take the initiative to welcome anyone. However, Gohan's identity as the Ocean Emperor was special. Moreover, the fact that he had a close relationship with the Xianyuan sword had been exposed. In addition to his disciple Lu Shihua, as long as the two of them did not die on the way, they would definitely become the two Emperor Sword-level sword-bearers in the future. Thinking of this, the great Sun Sword Immortal did not dare to delay. He decided to welcome them personally, giving these two future Emperor Sword-level sword holders some face. Just as the great Sun Sword Immortal was calculating how long it would take for Gohan and the others to arrive at the Sword Committee, the great Sun Sword Immortal's personal terminal suddenly beeped. Great Sun Sword Immortal did not understand what was happening. Countless beeping sounds rang through his personal terminal at the same time. This meant that there were at least 10 or more communications trying to contact the great Sun Sword Immortal at the same time. What the hell? The great Sun Sword Immortal instinctively felt that something was wrong. He clicked on his personal terminal, and all the names that were being called were displayed. Chu Xian's name was at the top, especially eye-catching. What's going on? Does the great Sun Sword Immortal still think that I'm that Gohan from before? Gohan and Liuyan Ling arrived at the entrance of the Sword Committee, and found that the great Sun Sword Immortal was not there to welcome them as he had expected. This made Gohan slightly angry. In his calculations, the great Sun Sword Immortal should not be so ignorant as to neglect 2 future Emperor Sword-level sword holders. However, this atmosphere only lasted for less than a second. Very quickly, Gohan realized that something was wrong. The entire hall of the Sword Committee was empty. Only a few staff members at the front desk were anxiously trying to explain something to the other side of the call. "Don't worry, everything is being investigated. I will inform you immediately if there are any new developments. Please don't be agitated. We are also investigating the reason, but the Sword Committee guarantees that we will do our best to ensure everyone's safe return. Apologies, we are not accepting media interviews at the moment." Gohan deliberately listened and found that these service staff were saying something similar. It seemed that something major had happened in Yanjing City, which was why such a situation would occur. However, no matter how major the incident in Yanjing City was, it could not have caused the Sword Committee to be empty. Something unexpected must have happened here. "Gohan, what happened?" Liu Ling, who had entered the Sword Committee after them, also realized that something was wrong and asked Gohan urgently. "I don't know either, but I'll know if I ask." Gohan quickly walked to the front desk and asked a female staff member who was on the phone. "What happened here? Did Yuan Ko come?" "Hello, we don't know anything at the moment. Please wait patiently for the official news from Yanjing City." The female staff member did not even raise her head as she replied in an extremely standard and formulaic manner. "Don't use such words to fool me. Tell me quickly what happened." Gohan slammed the table hard, startling the female staff member. He raised his head and shouted, "Security? Security! There's a madman here, get him out of here!" However, the female staff member seemed to have forgotten that all the security guards had left the Sword Committee to maintain law and order in various places. "You answer my question." Gohan reached out in a flash and grabbed the female staff member's chin, forcing her to look at his face. It was only then that the female staff member recognized Gohan's identity and cried out in horror, "Poseidon! Your Majesty Poseidon! Since you know who I am, don't try to fool me with those words anymore. Tell me what happened here." Gohan asked again. There's an order from above. I can't tell anyone." Although her chin was grabbed by Gohan, the female staff member still followed her professional ethics and was unwilling to tell the truth. "You don't dare to tell His Majesty Poseidon, but you can tell me." Liu Ling also stood up and said to the female staff member, "Miss Ling." Seeing Liu Ling appear, the female staff member was instantly overjoyed. After a short moment of hesitation, she decisively said something that both Gohan and Liu Ling found hard to believe. "What's the situation now? How bad is it?" In the meeting room of the Sword Committee, a few people in white robes sat uneasily on the chairs. The great Sun Sword Immortal used an angry tone to interrogate these arrogant scientists. According to preliminary statistics, 24 million people in Yanjing City are trapped and unable to escape. A scientist in a white robe said in a trembling voice. "Sword bearers? How many sword bearers are there?" Hearing the number 24 million, the great Sun Sword Immortal felt like he was going to go crazy. "I don't know about the other cities, but there should be about 22,545 sword bearers trapped in Yanjing City." This old scientist was about to cry. More than 20,000 people? Why are there more than 20,000 sword bearers trapped there? What are they doing in the game instead of fighting outside? The great Sun Sword Immortal slammed the table angrily. Because of Poseidon's ascension to the throne, he opened a celebratory instance. So most of the sword bearers in Yanjing City have gone in to do quests. The scientist said with a sad face. "What about the other cities? What about the other cities? What about Yuzhong City?" A voice outside the door asked anxiously. "Yes, the other cities. Yuzhong City. Wait, who's speaking for me? Is this a place you can barge in?" Only then did the great Sun Sword Immortal realize that something was wrong. He immediately shouted angrily outside the door. "It's me. I'm sorry. Great Sun Sword Immortal. The situation is urgent, and I have no choice but to resort to extreme measures." Guhan kicked open the door of the conference room and stormed in. Seeing that it was Guhan, the great Sun Sword Immortal could do nothing but glare at Guhan. How could he forget that this great god was about to arrive? Moreover, in terms of pure strength, he, the great Sun Sword Immortal, was no match for this spiritual sword bearer. Other than admitting that he was unlucky, there was nothing he could do to Guhan. He could only silently accept his appearance. "You. Calm down, use your utmost rationality and tell me, what's the situation in the other cities?" Compared to the anxiousness at the door, Guhan calmed down after entering the conference room. His calmness and composure infected the scientists around him. They regained some of their composure, but their voices were still trembling. This is the response of 8 base cities at the same time. I'm not sure about the specific situation in Yuzhong City, but I'm sure that at least tens of millions of people are trapped in the game, including at least 5,000 sword bearers. The situation in the other cities is roughly the same. What the hell? Guhan slammed his palm on the table, and the table broke into pieces in an instant. What had happened to countless opponents of Sword Maiden Online had actually happened. Sword Maiden Online had actually trapped the consciousness of countless people in the game, even the sword bearers were no exception. The sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. Chapter 1279. Your Majesty, Miss Ling, what follows is a secret of Yanjing City. Other than the staff of the Research Institute, there are less than 10 people in Yanjing City who know this secret. I hope you won't leak it out. At the entrance of a large department store, the great Sun Sword Immortal said solemnly to Guhan and Liunian Ling, "Of course." Guhan nodded and walked into the large department store with the great Sun Sword Immortal. Unlike the usual crowded department store, the flow of people in the entire department store had decreased by at least 3/4. The remaining people had panicked expressions on their faces. At the same time, many shops were closing, and most of the shops were already closed. Obviously, the major change from Sword Maiden Online had thrown the people of Yanjing City into a state of panic. At this time, Guhan and the great Sun Sword Immortal, who wore hats and masks, didn't attract anyone's attention. Under the guidance of the great Sun Sword Immortal, the two walked to the staff area of the department store and stopped in front of an elevator that was specially used by the staff. "This is the elevator to the Bat Research Institute?" Looking at the rusty elevator in front of him that was full of bumps and bruises, Guhan said in disbelief. "Ha! Who would have thought that the path to the most important research institute in Yanjing City would be hidden in a department store?" The great Sun Sword Immortal forced a smile and opened the elevator door. This was different from the push-button elevators of 1,000 years ago. Because most buildings had more than 200 or 300 floors, if there was still one button per floor, the entire elevator wouldn't be enough even if it was filled with buttons. Therefore, the elevator became a voice command elevator. As long as the smart computer said the desired floor, the elevator would go there automatically. "I want to go." The great Sun Sword Immortal was about to speak when Guhan suddenly poked the back of the great Sun Sword Immortal's waist, forcibly cutting off the great Sun Sword Immortal's words. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" The great Sun Sword Immortal asked unhappily. "Be careful. If Bat revolts, I'm afraid the other smart devices in the base city are also in danger of revolting. Does this elevator have a manual control system? I suggest that it's best to use manual control," Guhan said. "Don't worry. The Research Institute had considered this problem when it was first designed. Therefore, the entire Research Institute's system is independent and not controlled by BAT. Even the power source is not electricity. You can rest assured." After the great sun sword immortal finished speaking, he faced the control system of the elevator and began to sing. Find a friend, find a friend. Find a good friend. They saluted and shook hands. You are my good friend. Cough, cough. This is the activation code for the elevator, and it's also a children's song that was lost after the cultural apocalypse. Only by singing this song accurately can we go to the Underground Research Institute. The great sun sword immortal explained awkwardly. The next second after his beautiful song ended, the entire elevator began to descend rapidly again, as if they were sitting in a maglev flying car. After descending for who knew how many meters, the elevator finally stopped. After the elevator doors opened, Gohan saw a rather retro world. It was different from the sci-fi feeling of the Research Institute that Gohan had imagined. The entire Research Institute was actually filled with a steampunk style. Countless steam pipes covered the entire Research Institute, and from time to time, steam could be seen coming out of the pipe. Don't you feel that it's very strange? Out of your imagination? Seeing Gohan and Liu Ling's confused expressions, the great sun sword immortal's face flashed with pride. This research institute was built together with Bat. We considered the possibility of Bat betraying humanity when we were building it. Therefore, to ensure the absolute safety of this prison that Bat is trapped in, other than Bat's mainframe system which uses electricity, the main power facilities in the research institute all rely on steam. This way, even if Bat rebelled, they would not be able to affect or control the Research Institute, and the humans in the Research Institute would not be in any danger. This is indeed a foolproof plan. Seeing the Research Institute full of steam, Gohan couldn't help but nod. The worries of the human ancestors were not without reason. After all, the Research Institute was the first line of defense to control Bat. If Bat really wanted to betray humanity, they would first have to control the entire Research Institute. If the Research Institute still used electrified control layout and simply didn't connect to Bat's network, then there might still be loopholes. God knows if Bat would secretly brainwash some humans to help Bat connect to the Research Institute's control system. Or Bat could, through their own research, create a way to control the Research Institute's electrical circuits without a network cable. Once the control of the entire Research Institute was really controlled by Bat, then Bat only needed to shut down all the doors of the Research Institute, and at the same time, cut off the power supply of the Research Institute, and the entire Research Institute would no longer be controlled by humans. Therefore, the steam system, which was completely different from the electrical system, became the best choice for humans. Humans built a set of complex steam and gear drives to form and control the entire Research Institute's power system. At the same time, all the control systems abandoned computer automation, and all used the most primitive buttons and handles to control the Research Institute. This way, unless Bat created its own entity, it would not be able to control the Research Institute. Great Sun Sword Immortal. Great Sun Sword Immortal. All the researchers in the Research Institute looked like they were in a hurry, and only stopped to bow when they saw Great Sun Sword Immortal. But they didn't have any reaction to Gohan, who was behind Great Sun Sword Immortal. Ahem. These researchers rarely care about outside developments, so many of them don't know you, Your Majesty. Great Sun Sword Immortal was afraid that Gohan would be dissatisfied, so he quickly explained. No worries. I just want to see the director of this research institute as soon as possible, and understand what happened, Gohan said with a frown. Soon. I've already told him that we're here. He should be waiting for us in the main control room. As soon as Great Sun Sword Immortal's voice fell, the three walked to a door with the sign of the main control room. The three pushed the door open, and Gohan and Liu Ling's eyes were no longer filled with steam. They saw rows and rows of computer screens, and countless electronic devices. This was where the main Bat system was buried, and the only room in the Research Institute with a computer. Chu Xian, what's the situation now? As soon as they entered the main control room, Great Sun Sword Immortal went straight to a man in a suit, who was looking up all sorts of information in front of the main monitor. This name seems familiar. Hearing Great Sun Sword Immortal call out the name, Gohan said thoughtfully. He remembered that Tomono Kakaze had mentioned Chu Xian's name several times. It could be seen that Chu Xian was someone that Tomono Kakaze was extremely afraid of, as if he held Tomono Kakaze's life in his hands. At the mention of Tomono Kakaze, Gohan was probably worried again. Ever since he knew that Sword Maiden Online was in trouble, he tried to contact Tomono Kakaze at the first instance, but all his efforts were in vain. Tomono Kakaze's communication was always busy. In fact, he didn't even need to think to know that Tomono Kakaze was the core AI of Sword Maiden Online, and also an extended personality of Bat. If something happened to Bat, Tomono Kakaze couldn't escape responsibility. The situation isn't too bad, but it's not too good either. At least the lives of those trapped in the game can still be guaranteed. The man called Chu Xian replied. But in the process of replying, Chu Xian didn't raise his head at all, nor did he look at Great Sun Sword Immortal. His attitude was extremely bad and disrespectful, but Great Sun Sword Immortal seemed to be used to his attitude, and didn't show any displeasure on his face. How can you be so sure that the lives of the players in the game aren't in danger? I remember the helmet can only read a human's brainwave. It can't affect the human brain. How can this game trap a human's consciousness? Gohan walked to Xian's side and asked quickly. That's right. Stranger. Hearing Gohan's voice, Chu Xian finally didn't keep his head down, and raised his head for the first time. He squinted his eyes at Gohan, then said, Military Governor? Poseidon? Gohan? That's right, it's me. Gohan admitted directly. Nice to meet you. Chu Xian extended a hand to Gohan. Nice to meet you. Gohan immediately shook Xian's hand, as if they had become two very familiar friends. I say, Chu Xian, I don't think we've ever shaken hands before. Even if this is Poseidon, since when did you, Chu Xian, become so attached to power? Seeing this scene, Great Sun Sword Immortal said half jokingly and half discontentedly. I shook hands with Gohan not because he is Poseidon, but because he is military governor. Xian retracted his hand and said indifferently, I once tried to solve the initial dungeon, but I failed. I admire him for this. If that's the case, then please answer my question, Director Chu. Gohan didn't want to waste any time and went straight to the point. Actually, Gohan's two questions can be treated as one. Xian pressed a button on the controller and a 3D hologram of the virtual reality helmet appeared. I have a friend called Kirito. He experienced such an interesting story before. He was also trapped by the game system and couldn't escape, just like this situation, Xian said with a smile. Did Sword Maiden Online have an accident in the past? Hearing Xian's words, Gohan was stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately became suspicious of Xian's identity. Gohan immediately held the Qi Dian sword and activated its basic skill. As expected, he saw an extremely hidden dimensional node on Xian's body. This Xian was actually Yuan Ko. Chapter 1280. Looks like you've discovered my identity, Gohan? What Gohan didn't expect was that Xian pointed this out a few seconds after Gohan discovered the dimension node on Xian. Why do you say that? Gohan asked curiously. I'm quite sensitive to the look in people's eyes. I can sense a person's thoughts from the slightest change in the way they look at me. Gohan, the way you looked at me just now was filled with vigilance and curiosity. I'm afraid the only thing that could pique your curiosity is my somewhat awkward identity as a bandit. Xian actually took the initiative to reveal the fact that he was a bandit with just one sentence. Your Majesty, Poseidon actually saw through it. Great Sun Sword Immortal asked Gohan in surprise. He didn't expect Gohan to be able to see through Xian's identity in such a short time. Miss Ling, did you tell His Majesty Poseidon? Great Sun Sword Immortal asked Liuyan Ling behind him. No. Liuyan Ling shook her head. I never told him these things. He saw through it himself. That's strange. Mr. Xian's body has a special shielding device we designed. Only the most professional equipment can discover Mr. Xian's identity. How did you see through it, Gohan? Great Sun Sword Immortal was even more confused after hearing Liuyan Ling's denial. Great Sun Sword Immortal, please forgive me for being direct. Is it really safe to put a Yuan Ko in such an important position? Gohan didn't hide anything from Great Sun Sword Immortal. You don't have to worry about Uncle Xian. Great Sun Sword Immortal didn't say anything. Liuyan Ling took the initiative to say, Uncle Xian came to this world 1,000 years ago. He has a deep friendship with our ancestor. If Mr. Xian didn't act as the strategist for our ancestor, humanity would have perished in Yuan Ko's hands 1,000 years ago. If Mr. Xian really has evil intentions towards humanity, then he doesn't have to do anything. He just has to leave our ancestor and humanity will perish. Liuyan Ling said. I see. Please forgive me. Gohan immediately bowed to Xian after hearing Liuyan Ling's words. No wonder, according to the historical performance, the Sword Ancestors' fleeting year calendar was not outstanding in terms of intelligence except for its extremely high combat power. But he was able to defeat Yuan Ko time and time again. There were even many battles like the Battle of Red Cliffs where the weak won against the strong. At that time, Gohan suspected that Kenzu had an intelligent strategist, but he couldn't find any trace of this strategist. Now it seemed that the strategist was Xian. It was probably because of Xian's identity as Yuan Ko that he purposely hid himself in history and didn't want to show his face in public. It's fine. Gohan, your thinking is normal. There's nothing to apologize for. Let me talk about the problem just now. Xian paused. Because the same thing happened to my friend Kirito, I designed a complete plan to ensure that the human consciousness won't be trapped in the game. As long as the helmet is removed, the human will return to reality. In order to achieve this goal, I didn't choose the more convenient and simple neural connection method to enter the virtual mode. The helmet won't come into direct contact with the human's nervous system. It only receives the human's brainwaves to calculate and evolve human behavior. At the same time, it simulates the sensory response of the game by contacting some of the sensory nerve. Therefore, such a helmet and game should be very safe. Even if the bat wanted to kill humans through the helmet, it would at most destroy the sensory nerves it came into contact with. With the current medical technology, repairing some damaged sensory nerves is not a big problem at all. It can be treated very quickly and effectively. Xian's words made Gohan even more confused. In fact, Gohan also disassembled the game helmet. After analyzing the equipment in the game, Gohan came to the same conclusion as Xian. The helmet itself didn't have the ability to kill, nor did it have the problem of cutting off the human's brain nerve. From this point of view, it was almost impossible for humans to be hijacked by the game. They could forcibly stop the game by taking away the helmet. This was also why humans were so confident in Sword Maiden Online. But the fact was that the players in the game had been hijacked. Up until now, Gohan still hadn't figured out how the players were hijacked. This was the most important question he came to ask Xian. It's actually my negligence. I always thought that as long as the physical safety was guaranteed, I could guarantee the safety of the players. I neglected the soul. I never thought that this game could be a temporary transfer station for the soul. At this point, shock finally appeared on Xian's calm face. This was obviously far beyond Xian's expectations. To facilitate the experiment of matching humans and sword maidens, Bat's host computer added a biological brain. It's a brain made entirely of human brain cells. It's equivalent to hundreds of millions of times the computing power of a human brain. It's also because of this artificial brain that the fragments of consciousness of sword maidens can be stored in the brain. Otherwise, no matter how advanced a mechanical or electronic processor is, it can't contain fragments of consciousness. In the beginning, when creating the brain, I only considered the problem of fragments of sword maiden's consciousness. I didn't consider the fact that the brain can also contain human souls. What's more frightening is that the brain will unconsciously collect fragments of human souls. This isn't an active consciousness, but an instinctive consciousness of the brain. As a brain, it's born to desire a soul. This is a biological instinct that no one can change. The soul is a very strange thing. Until now, humans haven't fully understood the soul. But we discovered that human souls can actually travel at the speed of light through the quantum network. In the process of traveling through the quantum network, the soul will unconsciously be worn out. These worn-out soul fragments will all be absorbed by the biological brain. If this goes on for a long time, the players who log into the game for a long period of time will either develop a nervous breakdown or become a vegetable that has lost its soul. Unless an extremely precious soul solution is used to strengthen the patient's soul, death is the only way out. But by the time I realized this, it was already too late. The entire game has become the most important part of our society. The number of sword bearers doubled due to the appearance of sword maidens online. Although I reported the severity of the matter to the sword committee, they still decided to continue the game after a long period of evaluation. They couldn't bear to let go of double the number of sword bearers. So I couldn't shut down sword maidens online at that time. Both Great Sun Sword Immortal and Liunian Ling looked ashamed at Xian's words. It wasn't hard to imagine that among the people who participated in this important meeting, the chairman of the Yanjing Sword Committee and the leader of the Lun Yen family were among them. It was them who decided to continue the game for their own benefit. Even though the Sword Committee will allow the game to continue, I'm still worried. I don't think we can let this brain absorb the players' souls without limit. Otherwise, no one can predict what kind of personality will be born after the brain absorbs enough souls. So you decided that instead of letting the brain give birth to an uncontrollable soul with an unknown personality, why not put a ready-made human soul in it? Gohan continued without waiting for Xian to speak. Gohan, you're really smart. This was the only solution I could think of at that time. The soul born from the brain sacrificing countless soul fragments will be chaotic and disorderly. It might even go crazy. This is a terrifying result for the game. Instead of letting the brain give birth to an uncontrollable soul, it's better to let a soul with a complete personality control the brain first. Right, Gohan, guess whose soul I put in the end? Xian suddenly asked Gohan. To become the soul of the brain, one must be extremely loyal to humanity. One must be willing to dedicate their life to humanity. At the same time, one must be able to endure thousands of years of loneliness and not break down because of loneliness. More importantly, this soul must be able to make all humans feel at ease. Gohan looked at Liunian Ling behind him, then at the sword in his hand. He let out a long sigh. To be able to make all humans feel at ease, I'm afraid there's no one else other than Kanzu. Amazing. Xian looked deeply at Gohan. He didn't expect Gohan to be able to guess this. He explained after a moment of silence, that's right. There was no better choice than Kanzu's soul. Coincidentally, the Liunian family had many of Kanzu's sword scar soul marks, so I asked for one from the Liunian family. I let Kanzu's sword scar soul mark enter the brain and become its master. However, Kanzu's sword scar soul mark isn't a real soul. It's only a soul fragment at most. So, the brain is still absorbing the soul fragments of the players. I'm not worried about that, because as long as Kanzu is around, any soul can be killed on the spot. In the end, the soul was finally born. But unexpectedly, the soul that was born wasn't an evil and chaotic soul. Instead, it was a pitiful girl. She was so weak and cute that even a merciless person like me couldn't bear to kill her. At this point, Guhan also guessed that the soul that was born must be Tamina Sasuke's. Chapter 1281. After Tamono Kakaze's personality was born, we conducted the strictest observation on Tamono Kakaze's personality. At the same time, we hired the best trainer to conduct personality training, turning her into a heartless and harmless lowly personality. Xian suddenly looked at Guhan and revealed a strange smile. The so-called trainer is the kind that can train a woman who hates you into a kitten that obeys your every whim. If anything goes wrong in your relationship, Guhan, I have a very good trainer for you. After all, they are professionals. Uncle Xian. Before Guhan could react, Fleeting Time's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Uncle Xian." Xian laughed dryly and changed the topic. He then explained, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm sorry." He continued to explain, "We saw that Tamono Kakaze's personality was already fixed, so we decided to nurture this personality and not destroy it. After all, we didn't know what kind of personality and soul would be born after we destroyed her." At the same time, Kenzu's soul completely lurked. He roamed the game while secretly monitoring Tamono Kakaze. If he found anything wrong with her, Kenzu would kill her immediately. This was Kenzu's decision. We didn't have the right to interfere. In the following 200 years, everything went smoothly. We gradually let down our guard. Who would have thought that in these 3 years, there would be many unpredictable changes in the game? These changes were also purposely concealed by Tamono Kakaze. She even wiped away all traces. Because Tamono Kakaze's traces were very well hidden, we could only obtain a little information after a long time. For example, in this King Arthur's Betrayal Instance dungeon, the NPC's personality had changed to a certain extent. And in this Heroes Arise from Insignificance Instance dungeon, there was some sort of extension of the mission plot. In the initial instance dungeon, we actually lost a fragment of the consciousness of the King of Yu, Go Jian Jian, that was not registered. As for the 12 Skyscraping Temples instance dungeon, if it weren't for the fact that we found clues in a pile of discarded data, we wouldn't have known that such a dungeon existed in the game. Xian's gaze landed on Guhan. He looked deeply at Guhan and said, "Although I do not have enough evidence, I believe that these dungeons should be related to you, Guhan." "How did you know?" Guhan asked back. However, this question also indirectly admitted that he was related to these anomalies. "Because of the last message I received from Tamono Kakaze." Xian sighed. He clicked on his personal terminal and a message was projected. The message came from Tamono Kakaze, sent to Xian. There were only 4 simple words in the message. "Guhan, save me." This was the last message I received from Tamono Kakaze. After that, there were no more messages from her. Fortunately, Guhan, you came to Yenjing on your own. Otherwise, even if you didn't come, I would have asked the Great Sun Sword Immortal to find you. Because the key to solving our current predicament may very well be on you. Xian said directly. Based on what I know, the reason why humans can't leave the game is because their souls are controlled by the biological brain. But the one controlling the biological brain isn't Tamono Kakaze's soul. Her soul is also imprisoned by the biological brain. The one controlling the biological brain is a personality or soul we don't know about. Xian finally revealed the reason why the players were trapped in the game. "Mr. Xian, how can you be so sure that the one controlling everything isn't Tamono Kakaze? How can you be so sure that Tamono Kakaze is imprisoned?" Great Sun Sword Immortal asked in confusion. "It's simple. This is what Kenzu told me." Xian pressed on his terminal and a character appeared in front of him. This character was obviously Lord Kenzu. "Strategist, the situation is urgent. I can't say much. Now that Tamono Kakaze is trapped, I must save her immediately. If I can save Tomono Kakaze, then the danger can be resolved. But if everything doesn't return to normal after 10 minutes, then it means I've failed too. Then only my cheap disciple Gohan can save this world. Kanzu's image disappeared after saying this. It's because of Kanzu's words that I'm sure Tomono Kakaze is trapped. Xian looked at Gohan and said meaningfully, Lord Gohan, how long do you plan on hiding these things? What do you need me to do? Gohan nodded. I hope Gohan can tell us everything you know about Tomono Kakaze. You're the leader of humanity now. There's no need to hide the biggest secret in your heart. No one in the entire human society will dare to do anything to you. If you're still worried, we can talk in a small room alone. I swear on Zheng that I won't tell anyone your secret. Xian narrowed his eyes. He had seen through Gohan's thoughts and knew what Gohan was worried about. He also knew what words to use to persuade Gohan to have the best effect. Who's Zheng? Your girlfriend? Gohan smiled and asked curiously. Who knows? Maybe. Xian shrugged. There's no need. The great Sun Sword Immortal is not an outsider. After all, this concerns the lives of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of people. It's better to tell everyone. But I hope that everyone here will not hide anything. Tell us everything you know. Working together is the only way to save us from this crisis. Gohan sighed. Well said. Xian started clapping and said with a smile, Then I'll be honest. Jing isn't my girlfriend. She's just a husky I raised. Using Xian's joke, the atmosphere in the hall eased up. Gohan began to narrate the story between him and Tomono Kakaze, including how he snatched away Kanzu's Gojian sword in the first instance, how he first met I Ching in Heroes Begin with Insignificance, and the fact that I Ching had left many clues in the game. The strangeness of Artoria and Merlin in King Arthur's betrayal, as well as that Emperor's sword rank mission. Lastly, the strangeness of the 12 skyscraping temples, as well as his contact with Kanzu in the game. In short, apart from the secret that Zhejiandi was a woman and liked him, Gohan revealed almost all the secrets without hiding anything. Gohan knew that now wasn't the time to hide anything. You're saying that Zhejiandi left something like this in the game? Liuyan Ling and the Great Sun Sword Immortal said in disbelief after hearing Gohan's narration. They couldn't imagine that this was related to Zhejiandi from 800 years ago. No, it's very possible. Xian, on the other hand, didn't show any surprise after hearing Gohan's narration. Instead, he looked as if he had already guessed it was him. After all, this bat system was proposed by Zhejiandi, and the core blueprints for this system were also provided by Zhejiandi. Back then, I thought it was strange that Zhejiandi, a person who was obsessed with swordsmanship and fame, would be interested in making a bat system. He even provided a set of blueprints. Although he told me that he got the blueprints from an underground military base before the apocalypse, I scanned the entire set of blueprints and found that it was printed over a period of 2 years. There were many mistakes that beginners would make. This kind of blueprints couldn't have been designed by a government organization, or else the person who made the blueprints would have been killed by the government a long time ago. It was more like someone who only knew how to make simple blueprints, and wrote it according to his own ideas. Xian sighed. So, the bat system was Zhejiandi's idea, from the start. The Great Sun Sword Immortal and Liuyan Ling sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. At that time, he was already the world-famous and unparalleled Zhejiandi. Although I felt that it was a bit inappropriate, I thought of the wonderful future of the bat system, and because of Zhejiandi's influence, I decided to take the lead in the construction of the bat system. Xian said. Could it be that this crisis was also Zhejiandi's arrangement? The Great Sun Sword Immortal said in disbelief. No. It has nothing to do with Zhejiandi. The reason why this crisis occurred was because of the biological brain. But in the original blueprints that Zhejiandi gave me, the biological brain didn't exist. It was a problem we found during the actual manufacturing process, and it was decided by me and other great scientists. So Zhejiandi can't be the culprit of this crisis. Xian hurriedly explained. That is why, based on my inference, the truth of the matter should be that while we were overly focused on monitoring Tomono Kakashi, we neglected to monitor the creature's brain itself, to the extent where another soul was slowly taking form in the creature's brain. When it finally matured, it took control of the entire biological brain and gained control of the game. It even absorbed the souls of all the players in the game into the biological brain as hostages for its survival. Xian slowly concluded. If I'm not wrong, it will soon be time for them to ask for ransom. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.